Caddyshack. And this really ties in with something I've discussed in some of the prior streams, which is what's the movie called? Futile and Stupid Gesture, which is the story of Doug Kenny. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that because Doug Kenny is the writer he's the National Lampoon guy. Him and this other guy, Beard, last name Beard, they were Harvard guys who started National Lampoon, and they created Animal House. And then if you didn't know, it's like all the same characters, basically, all the same actors and writers and all these people that just went on and did Caddyshack next. And Doug Kenny thought that this was going to thought that this was going to ruin comedy because what was going to ruin comedy was that the movie Airplane came out at the same time. And he thought, oh no, we're finished. This is the new comedy. And so what we're going to be really talking about, I know it's weird to kind of talk about like the dynamics of comedy. And that sort of by definition makes it unfunny, but we're going to be talking about really as much as we can what is of interest, which is like how comedy changed in the role of, or in light of, like, really, you don't really think about this, but in light of geopolitics at the time. Because this is sort of post-Nixon era, post-Watergate, and this is when the boomers were like really hitting it big with their own special brand of comedy that kind of broke away from the Henny Youngman sort of, greatest generation comedy, which is, for instance, Norm loved Henny Youngman, but these were Harvard guys who really, I mean, it's interesting because one of the things about Caddyshack is that, like, you go back and look at a lot of the jokes, and they're so of the time that they're not funny anymore. But with Caddyshack, I'm talking about in general with these National Lampoon guys, but all of their movies, not all of them, but National Lampoon's Vacation, Animal House, Caddyshack. One thing about them is that they were smart enough to make jokes that sort of transcended they sort of were of a time and place, and they did that. They become relevant no matter what, because the humor is sort of timeless. And with Animal House, one thing that's interesting is they purposefully chose to make the movie in pre-1963 America, so that the movie kind of, to them, would capture, a time and place before Hunter S. Thompson said, the crest of the high and beautiful wave, which was like the hippie, boomers in the 60s. But every day, good. So what's the problem? So Animal House exists like before this sort of before the jaded, sense of the national trauma with the big 63 event, and then Caddyshack, which is a great and timeless movie, a masterpiece of cinema, is so good because, like, it's the ultimate summer movie. Like, the one thing is, like, it's like you can watch it at any time and it's always the same, and the jokes, but like they always remain the same and they always remain funny because it's sort of this like everlasting summer view of life and in the movies. Now, so we're going to talk a little bit about like the dynamics of Caddyshack and why there are a few deeper levels to the movie, because Doug Kenny wanted to make it a movie about class warfare. It became a movie about class warfare, but he wanted to make it really a Bildungsroman, right? A coming of age story. And it sort of went through a number of drafts and became something else. But Doug Kenny, you could tell his writing contributions to the movie. Like, for instance, when Spalding says, "You're going to eat your fat," that's Doug Kenny, right? And that is, a lot of this is good because Kristen said, "I've never seen this movie. My husband tried to get me to watch a couple times, but I could never keep my attention on it." Yeah, I mean, I guess there's like, you either just don't watch it or you love it. Like, and I think the people who love it like are obsessed with the movie, and that was one of the things that Chevy Chase talked about, and Harold Ramis, who directed. It was his first movie, his first directed movie, and they gave him $6 million to direct the movie, and he was like, okay, and they didn't really know what they were doing. But But he said that, if Kenny could only see like what the movie became like to people, right? And so Caddyshack is a movie about golf, right? Except in Scotland they call it golf. Um, and basically it's about this kid named Danny Noonan who is like a high schooler and he's a caddy, right? And he works at the Caddyshack at Bushwood Country Club. And I'm just gonna give a plot synopsis real quick. And we get a sort of a view of Bushwood and what it's like. And and then he is caddying for this guy, Judge Smales. And Judge Smales, played by the like the incomparable Ted Knight, the silver-haired, three-piece suited Ted Knight, Porterhouse, and and Ted Knight is a judge who tells him, Danny, I've sentenced boys younger than you to the electric chair, um, and basically he tells Danny about a golf scholarship, and Danny wants to compete to win this golf scholarship that will get him into college and then into law school. He's also a caddy for this guy named Ty Webb, who is Chevy Chase. And basically, Chevy Chase is like, if he started off as like what Doug Kenny wanted to be, because Doug Kenny like came from Connecticut, went to Harvard, but he wasn't really of like totally establishment, and he was like from an Irish Catholic family. His dad was a tennis pro, but he did grow up, at country clubs and faced this sort of the obvious elitism of country clubs, even within the country club society. And so he sort of made Ty Webb to be like what he wanted to be, but then he just became pretty much Chevy Chase in real life. And so Chevy Chase is like his sort of mentor, I guess. He's a pro, he's a jock, he's a pro jock. He's a like awesome golfer, and he's of the establishment, but he's not in it, as it says in the book. And so what happens is there's a bunch of hijinks and shenanigans. There's also another character named Al Chervik, played by Rodney, who comes in and he represents this sort of uncouth new money guy who is a friend of, he's a guest, and his friends are like members of the club, and he kind of comes in like a whirlwind, and he really throws off the system. And what ends up happening is they compete for this scholarship after Noonan sleeps with the niece of Ted Knight, played by her name's Lacey Underall, played by Cindy Morgan. She's from dreary old Manhattan. Yes, I was getting really tired of having fun all the time, she says. And then so he becomes Ted Knight's enemy. But then anyway, he competes in this golf tournament because there's four people play. There's a doubles, basically a game that they're betting on, and it's Al Chervik and Ty Webb versus Dr. Beeper and Judge Smales, and then Rodney kind of fakes injury because they're playing, right, and he can't play anymore, so he chooses Danny as his alternate, and then in the end, he's going to lose the scholarship. He says, "I don't care." Danny's kind of a early Gen Xer, I suppose, filled with a sense of like, I mean, his face is he's a weird character. He's not likable at all, and none of the people in the movie really like him. I mean, Chevy Chase says he likes him, right? I like you, Betty. It's Danny, sir, Danny. But he goes on to win the tournament at the end, and there are explosions, and it's kind of an Apocalypse Now scene that's set in motion by Bill Murray's character, and who's the groundskeeper trying to kill a gopher that's tearing up the golf course. And then in the end, like Al Chervik says, "I'll make it worth your while," right? And he's going to give him a bunch of money. We know Danny's going to go on to, rather than work in the lumber yard, he's going to go on to have a scholarship to college. And it all ends happily with, "Hey, everybody, we're all going to get laid," right? So it's really like, it really follows the formula of a kind of classical comedy, because it doesn't end in a marriage like a classical comedy does, because Noonan's too young, but it does end with this kind of consummation or hints of it in a way. And we also have a love story. We've got we've got like rags to riches, and it really is, in a way, a kind of a Cinderella story, right? But we get a lot of interesting elements in there. So first, I guess I will take us through some of the script, and I'm going to kind of interweave that with with the story of Caddyshack, the making of a Hollywood Cinderella story by Chris Nashawaty, not Nashawaty. He's Nashawaty. And a couple of things come out of this. First of all, the movie obviously is made with profits from Animal House. So Animal House is made in the 70s, and Animal House comes about because they get a movie. They were offered a bunch of money because they had formed basically a stage show and a radio show that came out of the magazine National Lampoon. So National Lampoon was formed by these guys, Doug Kenny and this guy Beard. I forget his first name, but they were both Harvard students, and they were members of the Algonquin Round Table group with wobbly legs. They're a member of they have various groups and societies at college, especially at Harvard. And their headquarters at Harvard, this was a comedy group that was formed in the 1800s. And there were a bunch of people came out of this. They had a bunch of, let's see, it says the Harvard Lampoon is the country's oldest college humor magazine with a roster of famous alumni that includes such urbane wits as George Plimpton and John Updike. Okay, now who are those people? Well, John Updike is the Pulitzer Prize winning author, prose writer who wrote Rabbit Run and a bunch of sort of stuffy Northeastern prose, modernist prose works. And we know George Plimpton because Synchro, bros, Synchro. We just discussed George Plimpton in the last stream not in the Don DeLeo stream. What was that in? Oh yeah, it was in the Don DeLeo Mal 2 stream because I was talking about the ties between publishing and Intel. And George Plimpton is one of these guys who he was the editor. He died in 2003, I think, but he was the editor of the Paris Review, and he was a Harvard guy, and he was a Ford Foundation guy, and he's one of the guys who asked for money from CIA to do propaganda fronts with getting a bunch of writers to make statements after Boris Pasternak declined the Nobel Prize. And anyway, Plimpton came out of this. And what they basically did was they were like, hey, look, let's do something. Let's do something funny. Because it was a comedy club, basically, but for, preppy Northeastern Harvard guys. And so what they did was they put together a magazine, and they were going to do a spoof satire of Playboy magazine because that had was about to hit its peak, and the Playboy clubs had popped up everywhere. And so they wrote to Playboy, the Playboy Corporation, and they said basically can we have permission to do this? And then the response was, no, we're going to give you we're going to slap you with something. And then they wrote back and said, hey, if you do that, it'll be great for publicity because we won't be able to pay it. And it'll just make us more famous. And then what's his name at Playboy? What's the pajama creeper guy's name? Hef liked this idea. Hef also Intel, right? Also Intel ties. Liked the idea of what the guys were doing and was like, you know what, maybe we'll do this. And then gave him I think he gave him a $500,000 check as startup money. And their first issue, and I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into this, right? Because of culture creation and all that. And these are Harvard guys in the Old Boy Network, but they decided to go ahead and do it. And they did it with this blessing. They did a first issue of National Lampoon, and it exploded. It was really popular. So then they parlayed that into a continuous magazine run and a membership. Shouts out to my sister out there for that first super chat. You guys, huge super chat from the best sister of all time. Listen, thank you so much. I love you. You're my sister, and I love you. I really appreciate you so much. So, you guys, come on, get with it. If you want to support me, because I just spent another fortune on books. If you want to support me, um, please, don't hesitate to hit that super chat button. Send me a couple of Kong bucks, a couple of Dugan coin, a couple of Oz bucks. Or even better, really, you can hit that Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. That gets right to me, and you will support me. Coming up after this, we got another some. I'll just show you some books that I got that are on the way in terms of analysis. One is in the not next, but in the near future. I'm going to do Don DeLeo's Libra, and this is another. This will be our third Don DeLeo book. We did White Noise and Mao Tzu, and this is about the 1963 big event and the conspiracy involving Larvey Loswald. I've also got. We're also going to keep doing our Shakespeare, and I'm going to do. This one is about Pericles, Winter's Tale, Love's Labor's Lost, and The Tempest. We just did The Tempest, but we're going to do probably Pericles, and this is Gnosticism and Neoplatonism in Shakespeare's plays. So we're going to look at that and discuss some of it according to this one scholar. And then, of course, the thing I'm probably going to do next, if anyone's interested, is this just came out. I got it the day it came out, so it's brand new, first edition. This is the brand new Cormac McCarthy book, and it's called The Passenger. And of course, it starts off taking place on the Gulf Coast down there in Mississippi. So we're going to cover that. Shouts out to Nico out there for $5. Appreciate you, Nico, homeboy. Thank you for that $5. He says, well done. So what these guys did was they got their startup and they parlayed it into a continuous membership, and they wanted to do kind of a satire of Henry Luce's Life magazine, with a bunch of pictures, and that sort of developed. And it's basically like sort of, half satirical, like, boomer humor in magazine form, but it did really well. And then they parlayed that into a movie contract to do Animal House, and they made it on a very, very small budget, not knowing what they were doing at all. Doug Kenny, if you're interested, Doug Kenny, the guy who wrote it and produced it, and he produced Caddyshack and wrote some of the first drafts of Caddyshack and a bunch of the jokes in it, is the guy in Animal House who says, well, what you need that for, moron? You morons? That guy. He's the guy with the glasses who leads like the parade at the end of Animal House. That's Doug Kenny. He's also in a couple scenes in Caddyshack as a background character. He was best friends with Chevy Chase. But what happened was Lorne Michaels came along, and it says this in the book. Lorne Michaels came along and did basically he nicked the entire cast of the entire like writer's room in National Lampoon and made this thing called Saturday Night Live. They couldn't call it that. The reason they say it's Saturday night and not Saturday Night Live is because there was already a show called Saturday Night Live with what's the sports guy's name? Howard Cosell. Howard Cosell had Howard Cosell had a show called Saturday Night Live that Bill Murray was on, and then that faded, but he had bought the rights to the name, and then so that's when later they became Saturday Night Live. Remember, they were canceled and all kinds of stuff, but Lorne Michaels then had the gall to ask Doug Kenny to be a writer for him, and Kenny was like, no. He said, I can't say it, folks. It's a family show, so I can't say what he said, but he told him to go away, basically. And then later, they were kind of spitballing, and they decided to come up with their next idea, which was the movie Caddyshack, because it was kind of a Doug Kenny creation, because Doug Kenny was like, I want to do a movie about all the people that I don't like from the country clubs where I grew up. But really, the idea belonged to Brian Doyle Murray and Bill Murray. They were the origin of the idea, because Brian Doyle, if you didn't know this, Bill Murray's like the youngest of like 9 siblings, from Chicago. And Brian Doyle Murray had worked as a caddy at a, exclusive country club. And a lot of the stuff in Caddyshack comes from his own life, and including the character Lou that Brian Doyle Murray plays in the movie, right? What's that sign say? No spitting. What's that sign say? No fighting. What's it mean? No fighting, right? Maddie sends $5. It says Gossip Girl book series stream when. We might have to wait on that one a little bit. Thank you for that super chat, Maddie. Gossip Girl. Gossip Girl has that actor in it who was in that show You. I didn't know him, but he went to my school. He went to my prep school. He's younger than I am. And he was only there for a couple years. I forget the guy's name. He's also got a band. They're on Kitsune Maison. Pretty good band. Is his name Joe something? I can't remember his name. Whatever, bro. Did you even lax, bro, at school? That's why I didn't know you. And then Fallen World Film sends $5. Thank you. Slow Boy Whiteboard turned me onto your channel. Appreciate your content. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you. And thank you also, especially to Kristen, to Slow Boy Whiteboard. Appreciate you. The most base poster. Oh yeah. Yes. My sister corrects me. Penn Badgley. Thank you very much. That's his name. Yeah, he went to my school for a little bit. So then what happened was, I'm going to go back into kind of some of the things here with some of the actors. I'm going to skip over huge portions of this book because it's not really relevant to what we're discussing tonight. And also it kind of gets a little bit bogged down. Doug Kenny, by the way, ended up, they ruled it an accident, but he basically lost his mind. You know, he was a troubled genius, right? As they do in Harvard and then Hollyweird. You guys ever heard that term before? And he was in Hawaii doing a whole bunch of things, whole bunch of substances. And he was there with Chevy, who everybody said, don't go with, he's not going to get you away from this. It's going to be worse. And then Chevy kind of took off, and then he was apparently climbing on some rocks on a cliff, and then they found his body, and he died at 33, eliminate confirmed. And this was right after this disastrous press conference with Caddyshack, where he basically told everybody to, some bad words that I can't say here. Oh, yeah, my sister says Joe was his character's name in You. No, I haven't seen that show at all. No, I've actually only seen it watching it with my sister. I don't watch the show, but there'd be nothing wrong with that if I did, right? I guess. So, oh no, he was not part of that Harvard thing. He wasn't part of that whole Yale thing. What do you mean Yale thing? Well, he was probably a who did a lot of that whole Yale thing. Hung out at Flutie's, Harry's bar, right? No, he went to Harvard, right? Says Maddie. So then oh yeah, so he ended up dying, and then what Harold Ramis had a, I guess, kind of dark but clever quote that ended up being sort of an unofficial epitaph for Doug Kenny, which was he died looking for a place to jump, which is sad. And I think there was, in the movie, at least in a Futile and Stupid Gesture, there's a food fight at the funeral. And then, of course, later in 1982, John Belushi, who was, tied in with these guys, also from Chicago, right? Son of Albanian immigrants, and was then this, made a star in Animal House, and then did Blues Brothers with John Landis, who directed that and then had directed Animal House. He also died at 33, eliminate confirmed, after a speedball OD with partying with Robert De Niro and Robin Williams all night, if you didn't know that. But anyway, that's dark. But so let's talk about Chevy Chase, what it says on page 37. This might be interesting to you guys. It says one person came to guests' mind, because a lot of famous people came out of this, out of their friend group, which I'm sure is not an accident. But one of them was Christopher Guest. You guys know Christopher Guest from the whatever movies, the one about the dogs and the all those movies. Anyway, so it says a former Bard College classmate with a funny name who'd once played drums with an early incarnation of Steely Dan, if you guys didn't know that. And we're talking about Chevy Chase here. Chevy Chase played drums with an early incarnation of Steely Dan. Steely Dan, of course, the name Steely Dan, we've talked about before back in the new Jack Kerouac City stream, because Steely Dan is a a term that came from William Burroughs' cut-up method in Naked Lunch. And it's the name of an object that I can't say here. But his real name is Cornelius Crane Chase. Listen to this, guys. Yes, exactly, Chris. They're all in the same cult. Cornelius Crane Chase was given the name Chevy in childhood by his grandmother on his father's side. It's unclear whether the nickname came from the posh Maryland suburb or the medieval English song, The Ballad of Chevy Chase. Chase came from a privileged background. His father was a publishing executive and his mother a concert pianist. That sounds like Greta. How dare you? Remember that? You guys remember that? How dare you? Whose mother was a concert singer, I think, opera singer. Let's see. Who had been adopted as a child by her stepfather, the wealthy industrial heir Cornelius Vanderbilt Crane. Did you know that? Did you know that Chevy is technically a Vanderbilt? Chevy grew up in a Park Avenue brownstone on the same block as New York Mayor John Lindsay and attended a handful of Tony private schools, most of which expelled him for acting up, including the Taft School, which is one of the, we've talked about the private school, boarding school system in our streams on, let's see, what do we do? Catcher in the Rye, right? Taft School, Exeter, Phillips, like Andover, Phillips Academy, Lawrenceville. After college, he worked for a time writing spoofs for Mad Magazine and performing with an obscure underground video collective called Channel One, essentially a crude shoestring forerunner to Saturday Night Live. They would go on to make a feature film comprising absurd skits called The Groove Tube. Oh my gosh. Despite Chase's lightning sarcasm and seemingly boundless confidence bordering on smugness, he always saw himself more as a writer than a performer. But Guest gave him the confidence to come out from behind the scenes. It didn't hurt that Chase also possessed the sort of athletic, dimple-chinned good looks that would stand out on a poster outside the theater. Then they flew in John Belushi, etc. Then they went to Second City. Second City is I always kind of tie in Second City with Steppenwolf Theater Company. Both are kind of brother sister in a way, I guess. At least maybe in an esoteric sense, I guess, if not literally. In that Steppenwolf is the theater company that who comes out of there? Willem Dafoe and Malcatraz come out of there, and then Second City is the comedy. Improvisation ad-libbing group that from which Saturday Night Live gets a lot of its membership, right? Maddie says, isn't Anderson Cooper of it? Yes, he is. Yes, he's a Vanderbilt. And so Belushi comes out of these Compass Players, a brainy group of University of Chicago, eliminate confirm alumni that included Mike Nichols and Elaine May. Then we get, let's see, John Belushi had summoned Bill Murray from Chicago for Saturday Night Live because remember, Bill Murray took over from Chevy Chase for a Weekend Update after Chevy Chase exited after, I think, the first season. Remember, Chevy Chase's line was, I'm Chevy Chase and you're not, which was hilarious. But he had a point. I mean, Chevy Chase was a huge star, and he was the first of this group of comedians who was on the cover of Time Magazine. And this was kind of the new comedy. Like this was like the edgy comedy of the day. And you look back, and it was edgy. I mean, a lot of it was, it was a firefight. A lot of it was edgy because it was satirical, and they would post pictures of Henry Kissinger. Etc., like sunbathing and, make up weird sort of their version of Photoshop. And yeah, you guys, Jet says, remember when Anderson Coop was on the other channel, Channel One? Remember when he was confronted by Lukeski? Classic, right? So anyway, John Belushi got Bill Murray out there to be on Saturday Night Live. And this talks about how Murray was arrested. Bill Murray's an interesting character. I mean, like if I have friends who live in Charleston, down there in Charleston. And of course, all the stuff about Bill Murray's alleged, all that stuff. I don't know, whatever. But he is, I think, a man. One thing interesting I know about Bill Murray is that he's never had an agent, which is kind of cool. like, and he's got an answering machine where, you know, if you want him to be in a movie, you leave a message on the answering machine, and he might get back to you, might not. And I know that that's true, and that he, you know, everybody in Charleston's like met him or whatever, and he crashes, you know, weddings and stuff and shows up. But he's also like, he's also got apparently a wild temper, or at least had one. And you know, the scene in, yeah, exactly, Maddie. The scene in Caddyshack where he has he shares the scene with Chevy Chase. They had to fit that into the movie because it was like, we've got to have these two major stars, the big characters, meet in the movie. What's going to be what's the impetus? What's the driving force behind this? And basically they were like, okay, Ty Webb's got to be, you know, freaking out about this big bet tomorrow on his game, playing doubles, you know, against Judge Smales and Dr. Beeper. So we got to have him practicing at night. He was night putting. He was putting at night. And so he, you know, he fours it through Bill Murray's little maintenance shed. And then that's when they meet. Cannonball coming, Cannonball. I've got a pool or a pond. I got a pool and a pond. A pond would be better for you. Is feather belts and Kentucky bluegrass and and anyway, so that's why they met in the scene, but they did not have a good working relationship, even because Chevy had gone back to Saturday Night Live, I think, to host, and Bill Murray, of course, had taken his role, and Bill Murray, like, instantly is charismatic and magnetic, and everybody loved him and all that stuff, but everybody was kind of walking on eggshells around Chevy Chase, and then finally Bill Murray was like, called him out. And at the time, apparently Chevy Chase, there was something about his marriage, and Bill Murray made a comment about it. And then Chevy Chase made a comment about his face. And then Bill Murray, they got into a fist fight. And then Bill Murray said something about like, you're second-rate talent or some, I don't know, some whatever. But anyway, they had a fight, and Bill Murray was, you know, apparently he was a Chicago brawler. But then they sort of made up, and whatever. Who cares? I don't really care about the lore. And Jethro says, I don't really get the worship. I don't really either. I mean, I think he's funny, and but what I care about is the movie, right? What I care about is, like, we're talking about Caddyshack, right, y'all? And I think that just like when we talk about writers and characters in books and the difference between, you know, putting pen to page, you know, obviously, we've done a lot of discussion about how, especially in movies, like, the background does play into a lot of times these actors are playing the character that they really are in real life. I mean, they said that about Chevy Chase in Caddyshack. It does in this book, but the movie is so, you know, it's this dichotomy between these two characters who are so different, and that's like part of one of the multi levels of the class warfare in the film. And Bill Murray, though, at one point in this book is quoted as saying, well, what happened was in 1972, on his 20th birthday, Murray was arrested while boarding a TWA flight out of O'Hare Airport. Unable to produce ID to show that he was young enough to qualify for an under 21 discount fare, Murray joked, "That's too bad. I wanted to get on because I got two bazombas in my suitcase, dumbass." So he got arrested. The joke didn't go over, but then it says they found 8.5 pounds of the devil's lettuce, bubonic chronic, that sticky icky, that swag, that kind. Right? He had it in the moonlight. They found it in his suitcase, and worth roughly $20,000. Murray spent the rest of his birthday in jail. He says, "It was stupid, but I guess I was turning myself in. I did do," this is interesting, you guys. "I did do one thing. I ate a check this guy had given me that was in the suitcase, and that guy owes me his life and reputation." Interesting, right? That he was trafficking. He was trafficking some Beelzebub's broccoli for some unnamed person, right? That he now that person owes his life and reputation to. Interesting. Anyway, let's see. One thing that I found interesting about Animal House was that while they were filming Animal House, because I'm gonna skip onto Animal House is that Chevy Chase passed on Animal House. He was supposed to play the Tim Matheson character, and he passed on it. And he basically said, I read Animal House and thought it was good, but I'd sort of already lived it. I hadn't lived Goldie Hawn. Okay. So he, I guess this is pre Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell will whoop his ace. Right. But so he passed on the Tim Matheson character to be in the movie Foul Play with Goldie Hawn, which is, which is actually not as bad of a stanker as you think it is. It's not that bad, but he was trying to get into dramatic acting, as these people always do. Then he ended up doing a dog movie because he told his, he did like a Son of Benji movie, and he tried to, he just wanted a paycheck at that point. And then they asked him to do Caddyshack. And what's interesting about Caddyshack is that, like, when they first of all, they filmed it in Florida, they filmed it in Florida because they wanted to be as far away from the studio as they possibly could. That was kind of Doug Kenny. And the major producer is this guy, Peters, Peters was, like, if you go to his IMDb page, it's like, this guy is not well liked, but he did produce a bunch of big movies. And he got fame because he was a hairdresser in Hollywood, kind of like Jay Sebring. And he was the boyfriend of Bob was Thwysand. And then he produced A Star Is Born. Chris Christopherson did not like him. And then they said, like, he's basically like, he's an illiterate guy and who has no talent or whatever. But whatever, he's a producer. And so he produced Caddyshack, and he did do a couple things. Like, he kept the studio's eyes off of the set so they wouldn't have any creative input into the film. And that's what kind of makes it an edgy film, right? Because they already have the happy ending and the love scenes and all this stuff. But he also was kind of a creep. I mean, Lacey Underall was, well, the girl who plays Cindy Morgan, the woman, she's she's a grown A woman. But she talks about how Peters said you can only be in this if you she had to be naked. She had to be naked in the movie. And they were like, look, the audience for this movie is like of a certain age, and they have to have this. And she didn't want it. And also then they made her, remember the scene with the diving board? And yo, look who just popped in, y'all. Yo, we know it's a party because look who just popped in. Hold on a sec.
What's going on, brother?
Yo, there he is. What's up, homeboy? How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Pretty good. Yo, you guys, if you don't know, this is David Patrick Harry from Church of the Eternal Logos. Of course, everybody knows you here because my entire audience is your audience. So,
hey, I just wanted to congratulate you on your hard work, man.
Thank you.
As you know, I appreciate what you do and the consistency of the quality of your streams and creating content like that, the depth that you go, man. I just appreciate the hustle. And seeing how many streams you're pumping out makes me want to pump out more streams too.
Thank you, brother. Really appreciate you, man. Yeah, I mean, you got us over a couple of different lines there. I think you got us over. We were like under 100 subs or something like that. You got us way up, and so and then you've done that a few times. So really appreciate you, all your support. That's really cool.
Of course,
Thank
brother.
you so much. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. This is our 90. I think this is our 90th stream, 90th analysis, which is, I don't know, that's pretty wild. I mean, less than a year, but this is fun,
dude.
And,
yeah.
And
the amount that it's surreal. I know. I look back on my channel. I have over 400 videos now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. People ask, and I'm sure people have said that to you. How do you put out so many, or how do you read so many books, or I don't know. It's kind of a lifestyle. Once you get on the hamster wheel, you just got to keep pumping them out. And there's a fulfillment there. And clearly the fact that you're driven towards it, who knows what, the future holds. I think the more hard work we put towards something, I don't think there are really shortcuts towards anything. So the hard work you put into it, whether you only had at less than 100 subs to now you're over 1,000, it's all building towards something.
Yeah. Well, you definitely inspired me, inspired all of us. And, and the thing you do that's cool is like the regularity, right? People, I think when people watch you, they appreciate that, like, they can count on you, like you're there every week. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
there. You have a certain regularity, so that's cool. And yeah, it is hard, but like, this is fun. This is fun,
Yeah, it
and
is
and
fun.
I'm thankful that, like, even one person wants to get on here and like watch me babble about literature, and so, and it's fun. It's cool. And it's what I love to do. So yeah, really.
Yeah. It's amen, dude. And you're good at it. It's clearly a skill set and it's useful for people. And the difference between even what you do and somebody just going and reading the book is the ability to connect it with other different ideas, different authors, different timelines, obviously Shakespeare.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Maddie in there said, "Yeah, he always brings it back to Shakespeare. Come on now," but that's the way it is.
I
So
know. Well, it's true though. Anybody that knows English, that's sort of the fountain spring of the sort of English mythic, mythic imagination.
yeah,
It's comes out of either Greco-Roman mythology or it's from Shakespeare or it's
yeah.
Christianity. And so, yeah, it's not just you doing that. It truly is poignant and accurate.
I think that the thing about like reading is that, like, and I've never been on here being like, I've never gone like, people should read more. I'm not like advocating people buy or not buy books or whatever. They make their own minds up or whatever. But I think that one thing reading gives you is that you feel like you're connected, you're tapped into the world in a
Yeah.
way. And it's like it's like I don't know, like I was talking to Jethro earlier, and Jerry Lee Lewis died today.
Oh
And
no, really?
yeah, yeah, and
I didn't hear that. I didn't
yeah,
realize that.
yeah, and I remember, like, so we did an Elvis stream in late summer, and I'd read this biography of Jerry Lee Lewis, and we had been talking. I think I said it on the stream. I can't believe, I'm pretty sure, it's not like I predicted this or something, but it's like hopefully, he's still going along or whatever, and I guess, and but he's an old fella now, so he'll probably it looked like it would be about time to go soon, and then that happened today, and it's like it makes you pay this stuff makes you pay attention to the world. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean, like, we read this book the other night, and it was talking about, we were just talking about this guy George Plimpton, this editor, and it's
Okay.
like, how often do I think of this guy George Plimpton, who's editor at the Paris Review, and then he pops up in this book, and then the side reading, and then again he pops up in a book about Caddyshack. Like, that's crazy,
Yeah.
So I guess it just makes you pay attention to things, and people in the culture are all the time quoting these people, quoting works of literature, quoting authors. And I think a lot of times that people misunderstand or they misquote. So it's important just to go back to the source of stuff. I think
Yeah.
that's particularly useful.
But that sort of living adventure you mentioned by like reading, that happens to me too. And often that's how I come up with stream topics or different ideas. Is like you read things, and then it is for me, and I'm sure this is true for you. And it's not. I obviously don't push reading on people or something like that all the time. But at least for me in my life, when I
Yeah.
got into reading regularly, whether it be just like fitness or anything else, I feel alive. I feel it's
Yeah.
like work. I feel like I grow as a person when I finish a book, whether it be fiction or nonfiction, I'm not the same person. And
Right.
so that is a traveling of sort of cognitive miles, right? And
Right.
so I think reading then can sort of age you in a way that actually doesn't age your body, but it ages your mind, and it provides like the closest thing to sort of lived experience that isn't
Right.
your own. And it's a little bit different than just watching films, because as McLuhan always talked about, reading is a hot medium. So it's an active participation. You have
Right.
to actively try to read.
Right.
And then once you get into it, it's just absolutely mind bending to think about the landscapes one travels literally through 26 letters.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. We've discussed this before. We words are, words matter. Words are so important. One example of this was I read an account of when they dropped the big one in 45, the first one, and they were talking about the guy flying the plane and the radio call, right, about whether to drop the thing or not. And they basically said, is it a go? And it's like the difference between like yes and no is absolute obliteration, like the thing that they're going to do, right? And it's all dependent on one word.
Right.
And so, or think of like, there's this part in, and this really happened. There's this part in the Doors film where the Doors were about to play Ed Sullivan in 1967. They were going to make their TV debut, and they were going to play Light My Fire, and they were backstage. And Ed Sullivan came up to them and said, fellas, can you change it from, we don't like the term, we don't like girl, we can't get much higher, because you can't say higher on television because it's like, related to the hippie culture and all that. So can you change it to girl, we can't get much better. Can you dig that? Can you dig that? And Jim said, why don't you just change? They said, the band basically said, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And Jim said, no, we're not changing the words. And he said, why don't you just change your name from Ray Manzarek to Irving or Sydney? It's just a word, right? But it's your name. Your word is, your name is a word, and it's bound up in who you are. It's your identity, right?
Right.
But it's just a word,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's an important point.
Yeah, I'm actually going to try to dive a little bit deeper into this topic with Posh Redneck on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Is Alfred Korzybski talked about he has a famous mantra called "The map is not the territory."
Yeah.
And for those, Alfred Korzybski was got into like grammar, linguistics, all this different stuff. And his point of being is that words are not the things that they signify. And he became a sort of relativist, that words are certainly just, symbolic things. But I think as Christians, the map is not the territory. We're going to title it "The Map is Not the Territory," or is it? Because the idea that God created the universe through the word is sort of a reverse understanding of the map is not the territory. The map is the territory, and that's why the map is actually more real than the territory. And that's why through magic, the transition and the changing of the map itself changes the territory.
Right.
And that's exactly what's going on through our society right now. Is through the redefining of words, they're creating new categories that then people in their lived experience are then inhabiting. And so that is now the territory,
right?
Multiple gender plurality, all this different stuff.
Right.
And so really thinking about then words, you're talking about, well, just a name or just the color red, but it's really fascinating to start to dive into the complexity of language. And then as Christians, the idea that sort of language or the ability to name something actually concretizes it and captures it as a thing to hold.
Right.
And that's why that's why the Jews didn't want to say God's name, because to name something is to have possession over it. And that's also why we as Orthodox always we say memory eternal, because as long as God remembers you, he has possession of you. You're in his possession.
Right. This is going to be an interesting stream. This is Posh Redneck. I love that dude's voice. Listen, we're talking about, one of the things we're talking about tonight is we're talking about like it's so weird to talk about this because it kind of, by definition, kind of skewers it. And that's like what makes comedy, right? Because we're talking about have you seen Caddyshack? I don't know if you've seen Caddyshack.
I have seen Caddyshack. It's a great timeless film.
It is.
Fantastic film.
Yeah, and like, so one of the things about Caddyshack is that like it kind of creates this place. It's what films like the good films do in a way, which is that it creates this place where like you're happy. It's like this joyful zone where, there are like minor conflicts, but it's all resolved in the end. And, it's like everybody has a full life and a backstory within the film with like very little, very, very few lines, but we trust that all the people in the film are like real people. And what's interesting about it is that like, it's so hard. Apparently it's so hard. I think this is the reason why Hollywood makes so few comedies every year, because even the process of like writing and editing a comedy, it's like once you've said the joke isn't funny anymore. And that was one of the problems that Rodney had when doing Caddyshack, was that, if you guys didn't know this, Rodney had never he'd been in one film, but he never really, it wasn't a big film. And this was like his first film, but he'd been doing stand-up for like decades.
Right.
And so when he got on the set, Harold Ramis said that when he got on the set, he was like, all right, and action. And Rodney just like stood there and he was like, what do you want me to go? And he's like, yeah, action means like do your bit. And so Rodney would like be like, all right, why didn't you just say do my bit? So then instead of saying action for the rest of the movie, he had to say, okay, Rodney, now it's time to do your bit. And like Rodney like was like so eccentric and so nervous. You know, it says in this book that we're reading about it that like, you know, all the comedians are like, they're like sad clowns, right? They're so insecure about everything. And Rodney, like, they had to go through the script and say, like, you have to say this line. You can ad lib, but like if we do it at take two, you have to ad lib the same thing, because when we're editing the film, we won't be able to piece it together. You can't just throw in the jokes and be funny like you always were. And like he had the hardest time with that because there's not a live audience to laugh at him. Right.
Right.
Everybody's like working on the set.
Yeah. The feedback from it.
Right. Right. So what do you think? I mean, why now do you think that like comedy, I mean, the only good comedy now is like really the only good comedy anywhere is like On the Edge.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess we all know this, but like, what do you think is the direction?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was kind of thinking about this in regards to the sort of archetype of the fool or the clown. So thinking about within a tribal structure, the person who inhabits a sort of trickster figure, the clown or the fool or the joker, there's usually one time of the year where they kind of come out and they're allowed to transgress all the boundaries, and through their transgressive actions demonstrate where the authority is.
Right.
And so it shows then comedy then it's always a punching upwards.
Yes.
Punching down isn't funny. So comedy in nature is a transgressive process that is punching upwards towards authority.
Right.
And so I was going to talk about Kanye West and how he's like, and so what's he doing right now and why is he being platformed? And in a way, he was the fool in a negative sense, a fool, right? Not the fool as an inhabitant of an archetype, but a fool for, you know, much of his career. Or you could argue about now or whatnot, whatever your personal opinions on Kanye West, regardless.
Yeah.
But comedy as an enterprise is so progressive now with its sentiments. Yeah. How can it transgress boundaries and punch up? Who's it going to punch up towards? The people that they want to mock are actually below them. And it's a punching down, whether it be conservative Christians or Americans or nationalism or Donald Trump's about the only one they can punch up to in regards to the sort of display or the differentiation and net worth. But therefore, the only thing that is funny is something that is doing all those things. That's why, like a Jim Bob, a meme maker, is so funny, because all he's doing is using the simplest and such crude cartoon form to do only that. And the clearest way is to make a simple idea that transgresses political correctness, but also insinuates and points towards where the authority is and what we're facing in the world.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you point out Jim Bob, because, like, you know, I mean, satire is both kind of timeless and temporal, right? Because the things that you satirize have to be of the moment, but the idea of satire itself has to be sort of timeless, in that, like you said, you know, you're critiquing society with the intent to sting. But like the important thing I think people forget is like that there always has to be like you have to be pointed towards some truth.
Yeah, it has to, or it's not funny.
Right. And I think that's why people like Jim Bob or Sam Hyde,
exactly,
or Nick Mullen are funny. But obviously we live in this time where, like, when you're too funny, the people that you're pointing at don't find it funny, and they don't let you say the things anymore.
Absolutely. But that's exactly the point of comedy, right? So the point of comedy, the comedian is always on the edge. It's a peripheral, it's a peripheral entity. And so And so that's exactly how many accounts does Jim Bob have to make on Instagram?
Right.
It's indicative of the fact that he's actually doing the thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This guy, the guy who wrote Caddyshack and Animal House and all this, Doug Kinney, is interesting because he was totally of the establishment. He's a Harvard guy and all this stuff. And he was like a Hollywood darling, but like his sort of like inner pain that was expressed through his work was that he hated the people that were allowing him to do these things. So like, for example, like with Caddyshack, he wanted to make it a totally different film than it ended up being, because he thought that there was one point where he threw the studio people who came to observe the making of they come and check on the movie, on the production. And one thing that happened was one of the assistant directors made a suggestion to Harold Ramis, and was like, why don't we do it this way? And I think it was the scene where, remember when Chevy is like giving the massage to Lacey Underall, and he has like the baby oil.
Yeah.
And he like dumps all the oil out, and then he like falls on the ground, right? And it's kind of like it's like a gag, right? It's like a fight gag. And he like, told them to do that. But the studio exec was on the set at the time, and he let that happen. But then he took the guy aside and he was like, listen, it's never your job to talk to the director. Don't ever talk to the director. Don't offer any more suggestions. Right. Which is weird, because if that hadn't happened, then the gag wouldn't be in the movie and it wouldn't be funny. But you can't do that all the time, because there has to be order within the film. So it's like ad-libbing, for example. They talk about ad-libbing and how like spontaneous comedy is funny in a movie, but it can't be out of control where it's like just buddies laughing and stuff, because it's not timeless. Or like in acting, the reason that that movie Meet the Parents, right?
Yeah,
the Fockers and all that stuff. Well, like the reason the first one where De Niro is like, kind of funny in the movie is because like he's playing the truth of the character. He's not playing for gags.
Right.
So he's like actually playing a serious role, like within the context of the film, if that makes sense.
Right.
But yeah, so I think that dog's barking. Hold on. Talk to the people while I get the dog.
Talking to the people, guys. Hit that like. Send in some super chats for our buddy Based Lit Analyzer. Hope everybody's having a wonderful night. Here we go. Now we have.
There you go.
3.
She said hello.
I know you love the spaniel.
Yeah.
Is that what kind of dog is that? That's a Cocker Spaniel?
She's an English Springer Spaniel.
English Springer Spaniel.
Very fancy.
Oh,
very fancy.
Is that you guys sit on your front porch that wraps around your old Southern
home?
Yes.
Yes. She sits out there and speaks English to everyone. In English accent.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, y'all. Send in those super chats. Support me there. Thank you, everybody who supported me. Really appreciate you. And what do you got planned? What do you got coming up?
I have a little somebody named Rachel Wilson's going to be with me tomorrow night to talk about witches, feminism, and old hags.
Nice.
And then Sunday, I'll be doing the 4th installment of my Introduction to World Religions, where we'll be diving into Buddhism. And It's going to be a very in-depth discussion on Buddhism. And then Tuesday is Posh Redneck. And then that means I need to come up with a topic for Friday.
Yes. Nice. Good. Well, we look forward to seeing you there with our homegirl Based Homeschool Mom. That'll be tomorrow night at 7:30. Should be a lot of fun. If you guys aren't out and about on a Saturday night, tune on into YouTube, and we'll be chit-chatting about Halloween things, spooky things, witches specifically, and why witches and Wicca and all this stuff is so popular, and how it's a false empowerment of women, and all the good old stuff. Yeah. We've all seen all your streams with Based Homeschool Mom, and we love Based Homeschool Mom, and everybody in here is already subbed to your channel. But Church of the Eternal Logos, everybody.
Yeah, I see some. I definitely see some familiar names in the live chat. God bless everybody. Shout out to Kristen and her family. Shout out to Jethro.
One
I'm
of the
not too
reasons
familiar with Hottie Toddy
that's
or
my sister.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, God bless her.
Yeah.
God bless. I'm not. Who is Dalman?
That's our homeboy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
God
that's our
bless you,
homeboy.
bro.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I know David Atkinson, Matty TRCB. I believe I've seen him before. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
one of the reasons why I've always liked this movie is because I I don't know how much to say, but like I can relate to this on a personal level because of the country club politics of it.
Mhm.
And I think that like aside from the sort of class warfare that goes on in the film, which is like you have the working class caddies versus the Judge Smales character, right? And
Mhm.
you know, yeah, you did pretty well today. Oh yeah, so I'm going to a yacht party on Friday. How'd you like to mow my lawn? Right? And he gives him 50 cents. Yeah, put that away for some. But is that like the whole thing about Caddyshack is that like there are characters who like it's weird because everyone in the world of the film like belongs there. They all belong like on the fairway,
Right.
right? The caddies belong. Then you've got Porterhouse who works in the locker room, and then you've got all these characters. They all belong there, but there's this sense of like people asking other people whether they belong there or not, right?
Right.
And I think that that's one of the things. Chevy Chase is quoted in this book as saying that his dad, he's a Vanderbilt. His dad told him to avoid golf courses because he said that's where Republicans go to avoid their families. So play tennis. um, and so like the interesting thing is that like when they were filming, they had a golf pro on the set, and the golf pro was like, "All right, everybody needs to come and do some lessons. Like we're making a movie about playing golf." And he was like, Rodney went for one lesson and stayed for like 15 minutes. Was like, oh, okay, I got it. You must have been something before electricity. You know what I mean? And took off. And then Chevy Chase was a tennis player, so he didn't really know anything. And Judge Smales Ted Knight had never like he wasn't a golfer. And the interesting thing about Ted Knight was that like the dynamics of the film like were in real life when they were filming it. So Ted Knight did not get along with Rodney at all because Ted Knight fought he was in D-Day. And he was this like hardworking, by the book guy. He didn't like any shenanigans. He didn't get the younger people. He didn't get and Rodney, like Maddie said earlier, Rodney was by all accounts, like really down to earth and really cool. He was. I mean, that's what everybody's always said. He was really sweet and really nice. But like that they didn't get along because he didn't like his improvisation. And that like Ted Knight, if the call was for 6 a.m. to show up on the set, he'd be there like at 5 a.m. He was ready to go because he'd done like decades on Mary Tyler Moore Show, and he had like, he just had a work ethic. Whereas like they had to hire handlers for everybody else to get him up because they'd been partying all night. That when Chevy and Bill Murray showed up on the set, they were like, Bill Murray's going to show up. We've got him for 1 week because he's doing Saturday Night Live, and he's not doing anything now. And they were like, well, can we get him here? And they were like, we can't find him. We don't know where he is. And then eventually he just like showed up, and that's just how they had to deal with it. It was the same with Chevy Chase, but they just had these weird like arguments on the set because just like in the film, it's like there's this question of whether people belong in their world or not. And so I think that's interesting because it shows you like a glimpse into a sort of a worldview, right? Which is the sense of even if you belong in something, there's a sense of not belonging, if that makes any sense.
Well, there's different ways to belong.
Right.
Pragmatic purpose for utility, like a caddy, and social relationships and higher echelon society. So it's like, do you belong because you're part of the group that's being catered to, or do you belong for utility because you work there?
Right. Judge Smales shows up to the club, remember, and he sees the gopher. And then he comes inside and he says, Porterhouse, there's a brown Audi parked in my parking space. Have a tow truck come and have it hauled away immediately. And there's this old man in the background, like getting a massage, like in a towel, who's probably also like a federal judge, who gets up and runs outside. I got to move my car, right?
Right.
because it's the judge's parking place. But then there's this great scene at the end where he pulls Chevy Chase aside and he says, your father and I, we went to law school together. We worked together. What would he think about this? And Chevy Chase says, my dad never liked you. And that's like, and then what kills the judge character is when Rodney says to him, this club sucks. Right. And he goes, sucks. And it's like that one insult, like tears down his entire world. Right. And so in a way, it's like there is this sort of Gatsby thing that happens.
Yeah.
Right? When they go to the yacht club and Al Chervik's yacht like runs over the judge's sloop. We christen thee the Flying Wasp. Right.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know how deep we can go with Caddyshack. but yeah, I think it is interesting because Porterhouse, look at the wax buildup on these shoes. I want the buff with the fine chamois, chop, right? And then it turns out at the end that Danny Noonan, who's like, one thing that I learned about this film is that when they were doing the casting, is that you remember, you guys, there's a scene where like D'Annunzio, who's like the working class Italian caddy, who at the end of the film roots for Danny Noonan because in the class warfare thing, he's against the judge, right?
Right.
And D'Annunzio, like there's like a little caddy who's trying to pick up a golf bag, and he's like, "You need help?" And the caddy's like, "No, I got it." And you think it's a little boy, but it ends up being a little girl. Takes off her hat, and that actress was the daughter of the Teamsters Union head that was responsible for the movie. And then, in terms of the casting, Noonan was supposed to be Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke was supposed to be the character of Danny Noonan. It was going to be his first film. And they were like, well, yeah, we really like this guy. He's got kind of a Brando energy, and but he's a little, he's probably a little dark. We think there's something dark about him. I mean, yeah, they were right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because like the guy who plays Danny Noonan, who by the way went on to like, he's in Homeland. He plays CIA in Homeland. He went on to marry Bonnie Raitt, the singer Bonnie Raitt. And his thing in the movie is he said they were going to cast Mickey Rourke. They thought he was a better actor, but they didn't think he was easy on the eyes, so they cast me. What are you talking about, dude? Noonan is the most awkward. He's got those teeth, right? He's smiling in the end. He's just like he's like the worst. He's also like kind of a little snitch, right? Mm-hmm. Lou in the Caddyshack. Lou is like, take over for me, and he baits D'Annunzio. Right. Right. 50. I ain't paying no 50 cents for no Coke. Right. Then they're going to fight. And then he gets out of it. Anyway. Yes, he's a total dork.
Man, it's been a minute since I've watched Caddyshack. Yeah. I feel like I need to go back and watch that.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I mean, the little things in it too, like the way that they fit in, the way that they fit in classical music, right? They fit in Tchaikovsky, and then they do the scene, where they have the like synchronized swimming ballet scene in the pool, which is like kind of a surreal scene, but it shows that there's this like sort of surreal beauty to the world that they're living in, which is like the opposite of when Lacey is at the pool and walks past all the like fat kids in the pool who suck in their stomach when she walks past. Anyway, yeah. Funny. Yeah, and also the soundtrack, I mean, like they get Kenny Loggins, right, who does the intro song, I'm All Right. And Kenny Loggins comes, it's like got this beautiful harmony to it. And they got Kenny Loggins. That's what got Kenny Loggins like on to doing the soundtrack for Top Gun, which we covered. We did a stream about Don Simpson. But it's basically like, you get this. Noonan's family is also crazy. because like he wakes up and there's like 15 kids in the house or whatever, and the dad is like, who are you? To the to the son, put it in the college fund. The dad's obviously raiding the college fund in the cookie jar when he leaves. But anyway, yeah, it's a good film. And I think that what's interesting is the fact that that it's just so strange that there was this time when like they did this as an edgy comedy that was the opposite of it was supposed to be like post Nixon, right? Post Watergate. And there's this sense of like like there's promise in the air. But they talk in the book about how 1980 was like the weirdest time to release a film like this because it was like the Iran hostage crisis was happening. There was like the gas crisis. The US was boycotting Moscow in the Olympics. And it was like this dark time.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like pre-Reagan. This is at the end of Carter. And they were like, nobody's going to like this comedy. But in a way, it's like the perfect time for a silly comedy like that. I don't know. What's your what's your favorite funny movie?
I don't know. I've watched a few. I need to go back and watch some of the classics because my problem is I've changed so much as a person. I go watch movies because I don't watch them as very often.
Right.
And I recently rewatched Anchorman, and it just was not as funny as it was when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And so that one, I don't even think I got through the whole movie. Kind of got bored with that one. Geez, that's a good question. I'm not sure. What is yours?
Well, Anchorman's good. Like any dude, I guess. I've seen Anchorman like a
million times. I've seen it so many times. Yeah, I know like the lines to every scene.
And in fact, like Anchorman, yo, what's up, Jerry? Anchorman is funny, is weird for me because when I went back to grad school in the UK in Belfast, they still didn't have like Wi-Fi, like wasn't a thing yet. Wow, I'm really aging myself here. It wasn't that long ago, but it was in the 2000s, and you had to, and like laptops were, I mean, they'd had laptops for a while, but they had just had laptops like with DVD drives, and the only DVD that I had that would work in my laptop was the Anchorman DVD because like DVDs have like different regions, and so I watched the Anchorman DVD like a million times just because like it when you're away, like especially when you're in another country for like an extended period of time, like you need things that remind you.
Yeah, the familiarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that thing they say when you're young, which is like the Super Bowl is watched by 10 bazillion people worldwide. Everyone's tuning in, and then you go somewhere else and you realize like no one else is watching the Super Bowl. First of all, the Super Bowl in the UK is on at like 3 a.m. So
right.
and no one cares about it anyway.
No,
but like,
of course not.
But I remember staying up one night just to watch it, just to be like, oh my gosh, it's sports ball, just like home, But yeah, Anchorman. There's an alternate version of Anchorman. Have you seen?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, they made it. They made 2 movies. And I've actually, I've got every DVD. I've actually got it here, and the alternate version of Anchorman is like way darker. They made a full movie of Anchorman, and it's about like a Uncle Ted K type character who mails explosive things in packages to like newsrooms and then like takes them hostage. And it's like the same cast, and it's not funny like at all. And so I guess they filmed the whole movie and they were like, this is not good. Just like let the characters do whatever they want. But it's weird. Yeah,
wow,
what's up, Jerry?
Yeah, I had no idea. That's new news to me.
Yeah, and what you were saying about here comes Jerry. Yo, what's up, homeboy?
What's up, Jerry?
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you, man. I think you're muted.
Hey, he's coming in.
You gotta plug him in, bub.
Hold on.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
like
they're my two.
Anchorman, Wedding Crashers, Old School. Those I watched those movies
Yeah,
uh till I stopped spinning, basically.
yeah,
and I totally can relate to the familiarity thing. Um, I remember the first couple like Christmases I missed that I wasn't with like family and stuff, and
yeah.
it's like you'll like watch like old like Christmas movie. I usually don't watch a bunch of Christmas movies, but I know when I wasn't with family, I made a point in the evening I'd like watch Christmas movies, and it was
Yes,
like this weird comfort. I'd like get summer sausage and cheese and crackers and like drink wine and just like it was so I totally can relate. You got to do things to be familiar, especially when you don't have large social circles or
right,
doing a bunch of things with a lot of people.
right. Yeah, yeah. I think it's what you were saying about a lot of the movies are like you go back, like for instance, a lot of the like Ryan Reynolds movies. Like
Yeah,
if you watch that
exactly.
movie,
What's the one where they work at the restaurant?
yes, Waiting, yes,
Waiting. That
yes,
that was hilarious
it
when that
was,
came out.
it was. And if you watched it like in the last 10 years,
No,
if
I
you,
have not watched that since I was like in high school or just graduated.
yeah, it's weird because I watched it like a year ago. I was like, it was such a funny movie back in the day, and it was funny to me because like I was a waiter for like 2 years, but after grad school, and so that was like it was funny to me, you know. But then I watched it a year ago, and I was like, oh no, this is not. Not only is it not funny, but there is a. If you don't remember, there is a like creeper element in the movie that runs throughout the movie, and
Mm.
you'd have to think about what it's about. But you rewatch it and you go, this ain't funny at all. This is like this is really disturbing. Um, and I can't go into it in depth, but it's pretty weird. And like, and I think that's one thing. Like in Caddyshack, like the jokes are not like they're. It's not that they're well scripted. It's just that they have like really good comedians. I
Yeah.
mean, look, they had Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, Rodney, and Brian Doyle Murray was on there. They had like an all-star cast of like really hot comedians at the time.
Right.
And like they're all working like sort of outside themselves in a way. All right, Jerry's getting himself fixed up and he's gonna come back in.
Okay.
All right. I think his mic wasn't working. Yeah, there he goes. So yeah, but I don't know. This is kind of a weird one for us because we don't usually do movie analysis. I mean, we talk about movies, but
Right.
yeah, Nico said Caddyshack's on the back burner. Yeah, we could just go through the script and just read just read the words. But one of the other interesting things that I found was that you remember how when they go into the pro shop, when Rodney shows up, he says, "Meet my friend, Mr. Wang." No offense. Mr. Wang, the guy who played Mr. Wang, was a philosophy professor. I don't even think he was an actor.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was a philosophy professor that I guess they knew, and they were like, yeah, come in and play Mr. Wang in this scene. Oh,
I mean, when is the last time there was a timeless comedy film? I mean, like Caddyshack, Groundhog's Day, like those are still funny movies.
yes. What's up, Jerry?
All right.
What's
Can you
going
hear
on,
me?
Jerry?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, dude, I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're good,
I
buddy.
was
We know
so
how it is.
late. I looked at the time. I'm like, oh my God, it's 9:30. So then I've been running around discombobulated like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to set up my mic, set up
Yeah.
what's up, guys? What's up, DPH? What's up?
What's up?
What's going on, man?
Yo,
Yeah.
congrats, Henley.
Oh,
1K.
yeah, thanks,
Let's
homeboy.
go.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, we're doing pretty well. We were gonna do this right when we got 1,000, when we got to 1K, but we now we've kind of zoomed past it, which is pretty cool.
I know, dude. You're doing awesome. I'm so freaking happy for you, dude.
Well,
Sorry, I don't got the light set up, man. I just
no, it's thanks to y'all. I mean, Jerry here and Jethro are the ones who got me to do this in the first place. So thank you to you guys.
Well,
Appreciate
dude,
you.
thank God you did, man. Because I mean, I'm learning so much from your channel. I know everybody's learning so much, and now I feel like I'm a little less of a slow boy because now I can tell everybody, hey, in Romeo and Juliet, when he says "Wherefore art thou," you know what it actually means. I impress everybody with that one. I'm like, that's my homie Henley. Yeah.
So Jerry, that was a good DPH had a good question there. What was the last like timeless comedy? I mean, Groundhog Day is a good example, but Groundhog Day's a strange one because like it has so much. There's a darkness in it, right?
Sure.
Right.
And there's like so much heart in the movie, and like he faces this sort of existential crisis, and he goes through. Jay did a good analysis of Groundhog Day. He wrote an essay on it that's really good, and I think that like, but again, that's the same exact crew that is in Caddyshack.
I'll tell you one that I feel like is kind of timeless. Last time I watched it, it was years ago, but it was still funny. Was Big Daddy with like Adam Sandler?
Oh, I loved that growing up. Yeah.
Like that one, it wasn't. It was still funny.
Yeah. I think the whole timeless comedy is interesting, you know, because like so many movies you'll see that are comedies. Like for instance, I saw like Superbad when it came out in theaters. I thought it was so funny, and then like I watched it a few years later, and I just didn't laugh at all.
Right.
You know, it's like so many of these comedies are topical in the day. It's funny, but then 5 years later, it's like whatever.
Well,
Oh, Super Troopers. That's true. Super Troopers was a funny one. That's a hilarious freaking movie.
You boys like Mexico?
Yeah.
I liked Superbad, but it was kind of, and I've seen it a bunch of times, and I you know, and it's funny, but it's also kind of, you know, it's a coming of age comedy, and for me, it's kind of different because like I was already older when it came out, so it didn't hit me the same. But I've always liked Pineapple Express.
Oh,
one interesting thing about Pineapple Express is like the MK Ultra element at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Remember when it's in
Shut it down,
illegal. Right? Yeah, you know, because they're in the lab, you know, and then they go to the, you know, and Danny McBride's in it. But like, what's so hard, I think, is that like a lot of the, it's also you want to be like sort of objective and differentiate like the actors and what you know about the actors from the comedy that you're watching. Sometimes that's impossible. You're like, this person is not fun anymore because of what I know about them, right? But Pineapple Express kind of, you know, I guess holds up for me. I mean, the last like comedy that I like thought was like genuinely like so funny from start to finish. And people might disagree with me about this, but it was Tropic Thunder.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah,
that was a pretty good one.
Yeah, because it's you know, it's like
Robert Downey Jr.'s greatest role.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he got an Oscar nomination for that.
You never go full retard.
Right. And I think the reason I like it is because one, it's a satire on like movie making itself.
Yeah, it's a meta film.
Exactly. It's a meta film, and it's a takeoff of, especially of Apocalypse Now and Hearts of Darkness, which is like the making of Apocalypse Now. And also the fact that like it's an actors movie. It's about actors, right? Trained soldiers, we trained actors, right? You know,
Ben Stiller is really funny in that too, man. He does have a lot of good movies for sure. He's
it's also Jack Black's best role.
Jack
Black he's underrated in it because Jack Black plays this goofus, right?
He always plays a goofus,
right?
Almost
but it's
always.
It's like DPH was saying earlier about the clown, right? About the kind of Harlequin figure, and it's like his normal role and stuff is like to play this sort of obvious clown. Versus the kind of the classical clown, which is like the wisecracking satirical character who's given license to say truthful things. And in Tropic Thunder, it's also a satire on the Golden Triangle and Nam and the politics of heroin. Alfred McCoy.
Yeah, right? Doesn't he fall face first into a giant pile of heroin at some point? Yes. He goes running around. Yeah, that movie's great.
Yeah, and he's a dark character in it, you know, who's like
that's
they're
true.
All
yeah,
struggling.
That's very true.
Do you remember the little films that they have at the beginning? Like, you know, they're all in different roles. And they have films within a film.
Yes,
and they have the one with Robert De Niro as the monk with you know, and it's like okay, but I think that you know that. It shows people like not taking themselves seriously.
Right.
Like the best part in that movie, I think, is when, you know, Tom Coombe, who plays the Harvey Weinstein character, says, "Who's the grip?" And it's this big like Polynesian guy, and he's like right here, and he's like, "I want you to go over and and punch the director in the
Right.
face, and he's
Well-
like socks him in the face.
What's more cringy than these actors that take themselves so seriously? It's
Right.
like, dude, you're basically a prostitute, right? And they think
Right.
they're
Yeah.
like some like high artist,
Right.
Acting can be a high art. I'm not saying
Right.
it can't, but
Yeah.
like the whole pretension of Hollywood and stuff is just, it's cringe, dude.
Well, like how he gets mad, the producer gets mad because the rap parties, the weekly rap parties, are getting more expensive than the production itself.
Right.
Right. And that actually occurred in Caddyshack. Somebody in charge of payroll, like, told the studio, they were like, look, we've got a budget for this movie, but like half of the budget is being siphoned off because everyone's getting their DMs in cash for some reason.
Right.
And so they told the studio, and the studio came and they were like, yeah, we've heard there's like a lot of hijinks going on, like on the set. And like certain people, they just had to they were like, just don't even come out at all while the studio's here. Just be on the set and do your scene. Bill Murray.
I'm glad you bring up Caddyshack, because I have missed the entire stream up until this point, and I'm sure you've covered Caddyshack, but I came here for Caddyshack and to say congrats. So,
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to
it.
hop off.
All right.
So, Baze, congratulations, brother. Really phenomenal to see the growth of your channel. Keep up the hard work, man. It's only going to pay off in the long run, I promise.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, homeboy. Thanks for stopping by. Everybody, if you're not already subbed, I'm sure you are, of course, but go to Church of the Eternal Logos. Our friend David Patrick Harry here, who is consistent in his high IQ analysis and is always there with us, and has been a great friend of this channel. So thank you so much, brother.
Absolutely,
really
brother. God bless you and the family, Jerry. God bless you as well. Hope you're doing well, brother. Hope all things are on the up and up.
Yeah, I look so garbage because I just started a union job. I've been working my ass off these last 3 days.
Well, I hope you make enough money to turn the lights on, bub.
Yeah. Look, man, I got the light right here, but I couldn't set it up yet.
I'm teasing.
I know. All right, God bless, bro.
Hey, God bless you, Jerry.
Thanks, man.
We'll have to catch up soon, man. Take it easy, fellas.
Appreciate you.
Great stream, and God bless everybody watching.
Thanks, man. Peace.
Dude, this light is killing me. I actually got to look find if I can see the lighting app on my computer so I can get this thing set up. I feel like I look like I've been like on a bender for the last 5 days.
I know you've been working hard. You're a hard working man.
I'm beat, man. I'm freaking beat. I got to go to work at 3 a.m. today.
Dang.
Every day.
Yeah, that's actual hard work, but it's gonna pay off.
That's right. That's right. How so let's get started on the Caddyshack riffs, man. What have you already covered like the whole movie yet, or have you talked?
I mean, we haven't really talked about in a way, right? But we've talked about like the class warfare elements in the movie, which I think is something. This is what is like really intelligent about the movie, is that it like has sort of deeper and underwriting themes that you don't consider when you're watching it, but it's things that people can relate to, right, and that we can sort of all relate to now. But there's a sort of an inherent, and it's not just the class warfare thing. I mean, that's kind of a cheap way of describing it, but the sort of conflicts that arise within the movie. But we haven't really. I mean, there's so much in the. We can just quote the movie the whole time. Right. I ain't paying no 50 cents for no coke. Yeah, we haven't covered the Dalai Lama. So I says to him, Lama, how about a little something,
for the effort,
You know
what he says to me? Gunga galunga.
Yeah.
Gunga to gunga.
Yeah. Yeah. So Bill Murray said that, first of all, like, what's crazy is that when they the character of Bishop Pickering, right, who is the one that he caddies for, he holds up the golf club and like he gets struck by lightning, well, that was meant to be sort of a takeoff on the Cecil B. DeMille film, right, on the Ten Commandments film.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, what's interesting is, I mean, they have the music and everything, the sweeping music, and it's funny because it's like the sweeping, like, epic music combined with the obvious rain machine. Like, but even though it's filmed in Florida, but like the obvious rain machine on them, and like they're just on this golf course or whatever. I'm trying to get 9 holes in, young fella.
I don't think the heavy stuff's coming down for a couple hours here. Yeah, dude, I love that.
That dude was in the Ten Commandments.
Oh, was he?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
okay, okay.
he was like Bill Murray has a good passage about him. He's like I loved that dude. That dude was so far beyond like
Right.
our movie. I can't believe that we got, and none of the actors even knew who he was when he got
Right.
there. But he
Right.
was like the American Laurence Olivier of the 30s.
I was gonna say, did you cover the whole thing? We were talking about off air the other day about Bill Murray's character and how he wasn't supposed to be in the movie that much, and they loved him so much they kept him there.
Yeah.
I know the one story they were telling on one of the like behind the scenes, features on the DVD. They're basically saying like when they introduced Bill Murray, they were like, yeah, so I had this friend back in Nam, and he crashed through a helicopter window, and he's never been the same since. But
Right,
it's kind of funny,
Yeah, so
They wrote him like one line basically.
well,
Yeah.
it's this book that I got, which is the making of Caddyshack, a Cinderella story.
All right.
Cinderella boy,
coming out of nowhere. I think he's got about a 9 iron there.
you're lean and you're mean and you're not too far between, right?
I will teach you the meaning of the word
respect. They said that, so his character is like that, but Bill Murray was like, they definitely wanted him on the movie. He was already a star.
Yeah.
But,
was he?
Yeah, he was a big
Okay.
star because he'd taken over for Chevy at Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
And he was like the charismatic like phenom that they wanted in their movie. Who had, I mean, you watch the movie and it's like the character is a combination of like, you want to watch him because he's charismatic and everything he says is quotable, but also like he looks like a regular fella, right? And that's the character, but that's like also him in real life.
Yeah.
And, or at least that's what they say. And so he was actually, this is interesting, you guys. Remember we covered Hunter S. Thompson. We did, what did we do? The Doom Generation or Generation of Swine. We did a Hunter S. Thompson's stream, and people may not know that there was an earlier incarnation of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but it's called Where the Buffalo Roam.
Yep.
And
Bill Murray, and who played Dr. Gonzo in that? Oh, Peter Boyle, dude. I love Peter Boyle, man.
Yeah,
he's so great.
And
that was actually really well. A lot of people think that Bill Murray, out of the two films, that's the superior one. I don't know. I think they're totally different, but
they're totally different.
They're great. They're great.
But one thing is interesting is that the making of that movie kind of ties into how Fear and Loathing was made, because Hunter Thompson was like really involved with the main actors in both. And so Bill Murray was on Saturday Night Live, and then he was on sabbatical from it, or he was on sabbatical, and he was like, listen, I'm just going to go play golf. I'm going to, because he was an actual golfer. I mean, he still is or whatever. And they were like, okay, well, Harold Ramis and Doug Kenny, the guy who wrote that in Animal House, the guy that this stream is kind of about, were like, well, we need to get Bill for this, because he got to start at National Lampoon also. And John Belushi is the one who got Bill Murray to be in Saturday Night Live.
Dude, that original Saturday Night Live cast, so good, man. It's so good. It's such a shame how far it's fallen, right? Like,
right. Yeah, it's totally different. But it's kind of interesting because Saturday Night Live, like, they're notorious for allegedly lifting jokes from people. I mean, you remember when they just wholeheartedly lifted that Sam Hyde, one of Sam Hyde's skits? Yeah. And remember Jay even pointed it out. Jay even did a stream, and it's like they lifted the whole boomer posting like directly, and it's like, okay, who knows if they've got a guy sitting there watching, but
they do. I mean, these people don't live in a vacuum, man. They're watching YouTube just like the rest of people. And that's the thing, is people, they have this disconnect. It's like,
well, they started off that way. That's how they started. Even their name is lifted because the name Saturday Night Live was already taken by Howard Cosell's Saturday Night Show starring Bill Murray. And that was taken from National Lampoon. So the Office and National Lampoon, the magazine, they had a radio show.
Right.
And then they started to do like skits. And the very first Saturday Night Live skit has John Belushi and one of the National Lampoon writers. It's not funny when you go back and watch it.
Was Blues Brothers a National Lampoon's movie?
Yeah.
It was. Okay, because I'm trying to think in my head of good National Lampoon. I know the Vacation series, Animal House, Blues Brothers. Those are the ones
that came about. Yeah, that came about because it was John Landis who they got to direct Animal House.
Right.
And Animal House was such a success because it cost I think it cost $2 million to make. They basically just like kind of threw a check at them. Yeah. And it's their first film, and they were like, this is going to be nothing. and it is the most. It made like an incredible profit, like even in the theaters. I mean, it's still one of the most successful comedies ever made. And so because of that, like Doug Kenny made. So in Caddyshack, when Chevy Chase is like, Lacey goes to his house and she's like, "Here's a check for $400,000," and he's like, "Oh, I forgot about that." Right? He's got these checks lying around. Well,
I got better though.
I was born to love you. Yeah. So then what was I going to say? So they just had all this money, right? And then Bill Murray went off to film Where the Buffalo Roam and like got like embedded in Aspen and was doing all this stuff. The book tells a story about how they were doing these pranks or whatever, and he tied Bill Murray to a chair and threw him into a pool because they were supposedly trying to have a competition to see who could like get out of like being bound in a chair underwater.
How about try that outside the water first?
And Bill Murray like almost drowned and all this stuff. But then when it was over, when it was over, he borrowed what's his name, the SNL guy, Lorne Michaels is I thought this was interesting. He borrowed his yellow VW Bug, Illuminate confirmed, son of Sam, Ted Bundy. And he was like, "Yeah, I'll make my way to New York for the next season." And he was like, "Well, when are you going to get here?" And he said, I don't know, I'll call you when I get there. But he took a sidetrack through Florida where they were filming the movie, and he had 1 week like before he had to leave. And I think he had to go back later to film one of the scenes, but he filmed all of his scenes in a week. And it's acupressure. Yeah, it's acupuncture. It's just the slightest. Yeah.
Don't stick me with those things.
Chris, it says when you spurg so hard, you forgot what you were spurging about. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm doing. And what were we saying about Bill Murray and the making of and the Vietnam aspect? And so the movie ends with explosions. Right, because they blow up the golf course to get the golf ball.
Bunch of C4 modeled into the shape of squirrels. I'm just a friend squirrel coming in for a visit.
The Viet Cong, the Varmint Kong. So he's got Semtex. And one of the things that was interesting was they said when they were looking for a place to film this, they couldn't, first of all, they couldn't film at any country clubs in California because number one, the studio would be too close. And two, they couldn't risk messing up a golf club where studio execs would be playing golf. So they decided to film it in Florida. A hurricane came in, like, I don't know, threatening the set. And then they had to get, they basically got permission at one golf course because this is what I was saying about country club politics. Like if you want to film a movie like at a country club, it's almost never going to happen. They're not going to let it happen. And the reason is because I think most people, the average person out there would think like, oh, they're going to film a movie. We're going to let them, we're going to do whatever do whatever they want. But the people at the country club are like, we're not going to let these actors.
I have one country club story. I actually was at a country club once. It's really highfalutin, of course. It's like this it looks like a castle from the outside. And my dad, he was married to this woman, Kelly, at one point. And I guess some people on her family were rich, like she had some relative that was pretty well off. And so we got to go to this country club for a Christmas event where they had chefs, catering like this like fancy roast beef and all this stuff. And I guess whoever it is that she's related to was like a film producer who actually worked on Twin Peaks. So I got to sit at the table with him and talk to him for a while about like David Lynch and stuff. Cause even back then I was super into it. And I remember his wife was sitting there and she's like, "Oh yeah, that David Lynch fella. Whenever he calls, I just let it go to the answering machine."
Right. Exactly.
She's like, "He's so weird." I'm like, "Wow. Okay. Well, why don't you redirect it over to my house and I'll take the call."
They couldn't. I'm dropping this link to
Cooter
to Maddie real quick.
Nice.
Maddie, check your DM. So so they found one golf club that they let him hang out in. And it's the same thing kind of with Animal House. Like they filmed Animal House in Oregon, and the whole cast went to an SAE, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, went to an SAE party, and they ended up getting like severely beaten.
Really?
At this party, yeah, because these are like, these are like Harvard, National Lampoon,
That's double
Hollywood
secret
guys.
That's double secret probation for them.
Right, exactly. I like how the motto for for Faber College is knowledge is good.
Right. Yeah. It's right up there with like food is good. Sleep is good. I like sleep.
Yeah. So yeah, but they filmed it, and then when they did the explosions, they specifically marketed it as okay, what's hot in Hollywood right now? And what's hot was Apocalypse Now, which came out in 79 and made way before that, but 79, and then The Deer Hunter.
Yeah.
And so they were like, we got to add like a troubled like boomer element to this movie. So that's why they had the explosions. But the problem was they were right in the flight path of the Fort Lauderdale airport. So like
really,
so when they set off the explosions, they were like, the airport called in and thought that a plane that there had been a thing, something had gone down. And they also here comes Maddie. Yo, what's up, homeboy?
What up? Y'all hear me?
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh, chilling.
So Maddie, if you were a character in Caddyshack, who would it be?
Probably no. I blanking out of it. It was Brian Doyle Murray's character.
Lou.
Yeah, probably Lou. Definitely.
Yeah.
That'd be me for sure.
I couldn't answer that question, honestly. I'd have to have somebody answer it for me because I have no idea. I don't think I would be any of them.
We've had a lot of complaints about caddies. Poor, what does he say? Poor caddying, smoking grass.
Oh yeah. Foul language.
Yeah.
Bushwood, a dump.
You, Angie, pick up that blood.
You owe me one gumball machine.
That character is based on a real dude that Brian Doyle Murray worked for. When he was a caddy in Chicago. And he said the guy would bet like on anything. Yeah. And he had like an underground thing going at the Caddyshack.
I've often thought about becoming a golf club.
One of the funniest things I thought about the movie is you were talking about the scene at the pool earlier is where it has the sign where it says like caddy swim hour, whatever. It's like 1:15.
Right.
Yes.
1 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's like 15-minute.
That's kind of a real thing, because I mean, I don't want to say too much, but I grew up at a country club,
right?
Basically, especially in the summer. And I basically lived like at the club. I lived at the pool and played tennis and all that stuff.
Right.
But like, employees cannot go swim in the pool. There's just no way. That's just unheard of.
Yeah,
right?
You can't have the help dirtying up the facilities.
Right. And even the lifeguards. Right. It's like, no, you get to get in after your lifeguard duty.
Yeah.
Right. And then you got to go. Right. Jerry, who would you be? You would be Rodney. You'd be Al Chervik.
I have no idea. That's the thing. I can't really relate to any of them.
I'll slap an injunction on them so fast it'll make their head spin. You. Right.
Yeah. Hey, Wang, I think this place is restricted, so don't tell them you're Jewish, okay?
Okay, fine. I'll have a box of those. Give me 6 of those. Give me a box of the naked lady tees. Oh, this is a good hat. What do you buy? What do you buy a hat like this? I bet you get a free bowl of soup. Oh, it looks good on you, though.
This whole stream I just assumed was going to be
good kid. Now I know why tigers eat their young.
The dance of the living dead.
Hey, Ringo, take some lessons.
I bet you were a hoop before electricity.
Huh? Yeah. Hey, it's a nice lady. You live alone?
Want to make $5 the hard way?
Yeah, I remember reading somewhere that like Ted Knight was just like pulling his hair out and losing his mind because he was there to do an actual movie, and I think you touched on this earlier, like him and Rodney did not really get along, which I think actually made the movie funnier because I think you could see that there was that serious frustration from Ted and I that I think was coming through in the character.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that actually worked and made, I think it made his role probably more comedic.
Yeah, I mean, he totally pulls off like the stick up the ass, like just uptight freaking dick so well. Like, he does that so well.
Yeah, they did one of those things that Mr. Knight says Rodney made the movie. Yes. Oh yeah. He stole the movie. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they knew that when they got him, you know. In fact, they did the thing that ruined Doug Kenny in the Holly weird industry was the press conference that they did at Rodney's comedy club in New York. I never say Rodney's full name because I have the same name as Rodney's last name. It's spelled differently, but so I don't, and I have nothing to do. I'm not named for him.
That's why when I first saw your handle in the chats, I thought it was like a made up name. I assumed it was like a Dangerfield impression. You know? That
was not Rodney's real name. In fact, he actually chose that name. He had 2 other stage names, and he chose that name because he went on the road and he did a few shows and he thought, okay, if I fail, then at least it won't be as hurtful because like it'll be a different name. It won't really be me. And then he the reason they chose him for this movie was because he did 36 appearances on Johnny Carson.
Wow.
In the 70s. Like he did like, people have probably seen the clips. Like he did like all these, and you know, Norm talks about this, like how like, you know, Johnny Carson like made comedians. If a comedian did their set and then he asked him to come over to the couch afterwards and, you know, for the afterwards interview, that like made the comedian. And like Rodney was so good, he kept asking it back and back and back. And that was Norm's whole thing because he never got asked to do, he was kind of too late to do Carson. And then he got asked to do Jay Leno instead.
Yeah.
And then when Norm won, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Norm's appearance on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Have you guys ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did Celebrity Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he won $500,000. He knew
he would have won the million.
He knew the answer to the last one. In fact, he predicted when they gave him when he was going over the possible answers. He said, "There's not a guy in the back, right? If I eliminate 2, that's going to put up this one. Is there?" And then Regis is like, "I don't know. Let's see."
Yeah.
He put it on, and then that's what they did.
Right. Regis kind of screwed him out the million, and it was all for charity anyways. So I remember.
Norm's point about that was he asked the producers, he was like, I know this is for charity, but like, can I keep it? Because I don't have anything and I got to gamble. Right. And they were like, no. So he chose Paul Newman's charity.
Right.
And then when he won, they were like, okay, you get to go meet Mr. Newman at his place. And Norm was like, I don't know. So
nervous.
Yeah, he was like, I don't really want to meet this guy. Like, you know, so he didn't go.
Well, he said he really liked Paul Newman. He was so nervous to meet him or whatever. He just decided not to go. And then he talked to somebody else later, and they were like, it wouldn't actually be like you're sitting down hanging out with Paul Newman all day.
Right.
Like he has a barn, and when you go to meet Paul Newman, you meet him in this barn, and in the barn is all his memorabilia and awards and stuff, and it's like a meet and greet, and that's it. He does it for everybody, you know.
I liked when Norm said that he met Paul McCartney backstage at Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And they were like, what did you talk about? And he was like, I don't know. I asked him like the scores on the football game. And Paul McCartney was like, I don't know. And he was like, well, you're no help. He's just some guy. I don't know. Whatever. He didn't. I had to leave. I had to make it to the sports book.
Right.
It's just pretty cool. It's like, who cares?
Well, another thing I thought was kind of interesting, just to go back for a second, is, and I didn't realize this for a long time, is that like Rodney Dangerfield was a character. Is that because, you know, I kind of mentioned like he was like a really supposed to be like a really kind, generous, kind of down to earth guy, and and I don't know if it initially was. I think it was probably just a pseudonym, but it sort of became this this kind of character, like this like public persona that, I mean, it was almost like I don't know if you call it performance art, but I think it was somewhere between like comedy and performance art, which is kind of interesting because you don't really see that, I think, with a lot of comedians. I think a lot of comedians are kind of like, they'll talk about being on, you know, when they're like podcasting or on stage or whatever, but his seemed to, it seemed to carry over more than a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that his his stage or his film persona especially, you know, was that, and they talk about this in the book, that like he was so insecure. He was so nervous but he was also like a party. I mean, he was like the biggest party animal.
Right.
They said that when well, I can't repeat the story here about what he said when he got to the studio. But he was like, where's the, and they said that like when they were filming, he would be up all night, because of some other things, but he would be up all night. And it was the biggest nightmare for like the crew, because if he saw anybody walking, he'd go, hey, come into my room real quick. I need some help with some things. And he would run and the jokes to them nonstop and be like, do you think this is funny? And like
dude, he spent the first 55 years of his life not successful at all doing this stuff,
Right. He's the like consummate professional in terms of stand-up comedian on the circuit. Right. They said this guy's all like Naugahyde and Catskill Mountains comedy clubs. And in fact, Rodney said at the press conference, they were like, did you like being in this movie? And he was like, this movie cost me $1 million because he had to take time off of his headlining set in Vegas to go do the movie, and he didn't think it would be worthwhile. Of course, that's what like made him legendary, is this movie. But yeah, it's interesting, like I think that one of the things they don't talk about in the book is the fact that the like real inside truth of a lot of this stuff is the exact same sort of thing that happened with Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Coombs, in that we're told that they get these actors right because they're because they really want to work with Kubrick, and I'm sure that's true on a certain level, but we've also heard that Kubrick got them specifically because their real life mirrored the life of the characters in the film.
Really?
And so Oliver Stone also talked about this in one of his autobiographies. He talked about how like basically like when the actor is either not skilled enough to portray the character like in their own vision, what they do, or they want something different, they will like, it's like how Kubrick terrorized Shelley Long in The Shining. Like Shelley Duvall, not Shelley Long, Shelley Duvall. Yeah. Because and like, she's like, I can't understand why he was so harsh. And it's like, well, because you're a pawn and you were used on this set to get the vision that he wanted. And that kind of, in a way, it's kind of reassuring in a sense, because it's like, you remember that you're a real human being. Right. And you're not above everyone. And I think that's kind of what they did with Caddyshack with Ted Knight and Rodney. They were like, there's no way these characters are going to mesh like at all. Like the people in real life, there's no way they won't be friends. Yeah. But that will kind of play into the dichotomy between the two characters on the set.
Yeah.
Also with the guy who plays Noonan, right? It's like, no, we're not getting you because you're a heartthrob. Like you're the opposite. You're a total dork. Right? Noonan. Right.
I was trying to think of that line from will you turn that music down, or was it music isn't allowed on the golf course?
Right.
Oh man. Dude, so I was raised on that movie. So let's dance. Dude, I was literally raised in that movie. My whole family would watch that over and over and over again. That was like the first movie I have memories from is Caddyshack, dude.
The Gunga Lagunga speech is in here. And
a good hitter, the llama.
Yeah.
Strong.
So here's what he says. Because it's a short speech. Yeah. So I jump ship in Hong Kong, and I make my way over to Tibet. And I get on as a looper at a course over there in the Himalayas.
A looper?
A looper, a caddie, looper, jock. So I tell them I'm a pro jock. And who do you think they give me? The Dalai Lama himself. 12th son of the Lama, flowing robes, the grace, bald, striking. So I'm on the first tee with him. I give him the driver. He hauls off, whacks one, big hitter, the Lama. Long. Into a 10,000-foot crevice right at the base of this glacier. You know what the Lama says? Gunga Galunga. Gunga Lagunga. So we finish 18 and he's going to stiff me. And I say, Lama, hey, how about a little something, for the effort, And he says, oh, there won't be any money. But when you die on your deathbed, you will receive total consciousness. So I got that going
for me, which is nice.
Which is nice. Yeah. And this says, the miracle of the Dalai Lama scene on screen is that it feels completely tossed off and spontaneous. But they shot it for 7 hours, and Murray would toss in things trying to keep it fresh and unpredictable. And each time he would press the rusty tines of the pitchfork a little harder on the actor's neck.
Oh, you can see it. It's going right into his neck.
Yeah. And so what happened was, like, first they had a scythe, like a Grim Reaper scythe. Because remember, he uses that at the beginning when he meets McKinnish, right? It's not my fault. Nobody can understand what you're saying. So you're telling me to kill
pardon me, but if I kill all the golfers, they're gonna lock me up and throw away the key.
So I do that with we don't even need a reason.
Yeah, I can do that. I don't even need a reason.
So, but then they were like, no, get this pitchfork. And like, he's sticking the thing in the kid's neck, right? And that's the opposite of what he does with the Cinderella boy story. That was one take. So they were like, all right, do something. And like, he's got his golf club and he's like hitting the flowers or whatever. Cinderella boy, right? Comes out of nowhere.
Coming out of nowhere.
Yeah. So anyway.
One thing I like so much about that character is, like, if you've ever worked any kind of low wage job, you've worked with Carl Spackler. Like everybody has worked with that guy at one point or another. And I think, I don't know, I think it's, to use the word relatable is kind of like lame these days, but it's just interesting because if you've worked those kind of jobs, like you know exactly who that guy is.
Yeah. You got a pool over there? Yeah, we got a pool and a pond. Pond would be good for you.
Yeah. Get stoned is the bejesus spelled off. And the best. Okay, I think the best like single part of that movie, which I'm sure is, I'm pretty sure is improvised, is the fact that like they're in the maintenance shed, and he lives in there, right? And he welcomes him in. He's got like this dirty beer stained like beater on, and he's like, "No, have a seat." And he spits in his living room.
Cannonball come in, Cannonball. And then he takes the leaf blower and he
cleans it with the leaf blower.
Just blowing shit everywhere.
And when he goes to shoot the gopher at night, like he's carrying 2 sixers,
right?
Like with a flashlight,
2 6-packs.
His flashlight like stuck to the top of a rifle.
Yeah, it's just duct taped on there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
dude. What
that whole like riff about like the government of the United Nations. I always thought it was interesting. He said the government of the United Nations, and then the license to kill gophers. I don't know. The Varmint Kong.
Yeah,
that was kind of interesting.
Maybe this guy's ex-Phoenix Project or something.
Right.
Could be.
And he's studying to be head groundskeeper. He's got this giant book. He's like, I'm working. They don't just let anybody be
magnesium. A lot of people don't know what that is, right? Look out, Ty. Somebody's giving you the big eye. Right?
Yeah. It's hard to think of a movie that really matches Caddyshack in terms of, like you were saying, timeless comedy, man. It's really hard for me to pull them out. Like
the politics of it also come into play when he meets Lacey Underall, right? When Ty Webb meets her at the party. Yeah. And she's like, "What do you like to do for fun?" He's like, "Play golf." And she says, "Nixon plays golf."
Right.
I bet you got a lot of nice ties, Ty. And then he said, "What do you like doing?" She says,
going to bullfights on acid,
skinny skiing, going to bullfights." And then the best part is he says, "Let's pretend we're real human beings." Right. And he tries to kiss her, and she goes, "Lame." Right. And what I didn't know is that those two were having a thing. She later dated Bill Murray, I think, but they had a thing, and the scene where they film the scene like inside of his house,
the massage or whatever.
Yeah, the massage. Yeah. That Doug Kenny was like on the other side of that
It's like
wall.
reaching under a rug.
Right. Yeah, and then it was like he's like on the other side. Yeah, he's on the other side of the wall, like feeding her, and that Chevy Chase was feeding her lines throughout the scene. And that like the reason it works is because of like there's a tension. Like there's a tension between the two. Like it's a good tension. but it's like he wants to whatever, and she's kind of like, okay, no, and she kind of turns away or whatever.
Right.
But then they end they end up like skinny dipping in the pool, like on the slide. And she said that after the film wrapped, Bill Murray was like, hey, you want to get out of here? And she was like, all right. And she said the next thing she knew, she woke up and they were on like a nudist beach in Florida the next day, but 300 miles away.
Right.
Like she was like, he was the most fun or whatever.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was the most fun.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully it wasn't something else. But,
right. Yeah.
But and then one of my other favorite parts is the poem that Judge Smales reads when he's christening the flying wasp, which is really like emblematic of the entire movie and it's the entire like social structure in it, right? And the poem, this is a wonderful poem. He says, I got a little poem I'd like to read in honor of this occasion. If I wait, Spalding, get your foot off the boat. Right?
You look like Dick Cavett.
You two look like a couple of boogies. Scamper along now. He says, it's easy to grin when your ship comes in and you've got the stock market beat. But the man worthwhile is the man who can smile when his shorts aren't too tight in the seat. Okay, Pookie. Right.
Yeah.
You scratched my anchor. Right?
I almost got head from Amelia Earhart.
Yeah. But I guess that's all I got for the film. I mean, all we can do is just talk about the film.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have because you touched on the kind of class war angle, and I'd never really thought about it in those kind of terms, but something I was just thinking about, especially with that boat scene, is you kind of have like the lower lower socioeconomic versus the higher, but then you also get like the nouveau riche versus like the old money kind of federal judge versus the guy who's just buying up like parking lots and putting apartments there.
Yes, and the bishop too. Never tell a Navy man when he's had too much, or never ask a Navy man how much he's had to drink.
Cemeteries, what does he say? Cemeteries and parking lots, biggest waste of prime real estate. And that's in there because they really were building a condo complex right next door. So they just used that as a set piece.
Wow.
And it's even inherent like in the clothes that they wear, right? Because when, like Chervik wears like the gaudiest non-matching clothes throughout. He obviously stands out like a sore thumb, but he's like, he even like, okay, in the scene where they're all in black tie, right? And Judge Smales has on the links of St. Andrews jacket. Right. And he just doesn't fit in, but it doesn't matter because he has so much charisma and he's got so much money. And that's kind of the sort of Gatsby aspect of the film. And but it's interesting, like that you bring it up, Kutsky, because, they've got this sloop, right? That's, it's a sailing yacht, but they're in this kind of like redneck Riviera, sort of a port or whatever, and you've got Chervik has this like monstrosity of like a mechanized yacht, right? And he just runs right over it. He just like and then of course they go back home, and I think that was the tea, right? Mr. Haverkamp. Over here.
Oh golly, I'm hot today.
Yeah, that's a peach, hon. Right.
Oh man.
So yeah, you get like this social strata within the movie, and then you get also like the dichotomy between the characters within the movie. And what's interesting is how it all ends up like in a happy ending. So it ends up with explosions, and the explosions there's obviously like a sexual element to it. Like with the first time you see Carl, right, when he's washing the golf balls.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, but it's not too gratuitous, right? It's not classy, but it's not too gratuitous so that you could still like it's like a PG movie, right? And even the love affair between or the relationship rather between Noonan and the Irish girl, the waitress girl, who's often forgotten in the movie. She's the one who that actress plays the daughter of the Faber College dean in Animal House, and obviously the accent she uses is like such a bad Irish accent, but they were like no, this is good. We want this.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Been plucked more times than the rose of Tralee or whatever she says. Right. It's
well,
like,
thanks for nothing.
Yeah.
D. Allman's got the go. Do you do drugs, Danny? Yes.
Every day. Yeah.
Good.
So, yeah. So that line also was like the difference between like the original script, because it went through like 3 different versions of the script, and that was where like Chevy Chase is so good, because originally it didn't have the so what's the problem line in it, and that like gives it a whole different context, right? Or like the 17th century philosopher Basho once said, right, a flute with no holes is not a flute.
A donut with no holes is a Danish.
Yeah. That's incredible. Thank you very little. Right.
Yeah. What did I just give you? $250 yesterday? I can't foot the bill for everything.
Yeah. What's wrong with the lumber yard? I own 2 lumber yards.
Don't know where they.
You don't spend much time there. I'm not quite sure where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ty is interesting because he's like the playboy,
right?
Who has all the money. He has more money than anybody else there. He's got charisma. He's got talent. Right. How do you measure yourself with other golfers, Ty?
By height.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short, Judge. You're a tremendous
slouch. Yes.
And he has no respect for authority or the system, but he's still like within the system. Right. And that's exactly like how that's why Chevy Chase like took the role, because he's a Vanderbilt. Right. And he went to like Taft School and he went to Bard College and all this stuff, but he like didn't feel like he had the talent that the writer did, Doug Kenny. So they were kind of like, it's this dichotomy between like they're looking for something in someone else. Right. And Noonan like wants to be, he wants to be a senator, but like they make a joke of it, like senator, right? You remember when Judge Smales like introduces him to Chuck Schick, right? He's clerking for me. Where'd you go? Where do you go? Oh, Harvard. You go to Harvard?
Yeah. He's like, oh, I want to attend law school as well. Oh, really?
Where
Harvard?
And he's like, Saint Vitus of
where? Walks away. Yeah, he walks away. Right.
It's interesting because I mean you see with now I'm like thinking about it, because I like I said, I hadn't really thought about it in the kind of class terms, but you think about how it seems like the one reading of it is part of what kind of leads to Smales kind of losing it, is that he has this guy he grew up, he was friends with his dad, Chevy Chase's character Ty, who reveals to him like, no, like my dad didn't like you, and he just has this total like rejection, even though like you said he's within that kind of cultural that kind of culture, but he still, and it's like basically rejects it and kind of flouts all the conventions, and then Smales thinks that Chervick is coming in there to try to be a member, and he's like, no, like I wouldn't join this crummy snobatorium, like I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of interesting to see that that I don't know, because I think he's so like Smales is so just enmeshed in that way of life. So I don't, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't know, it's kind of an interesting angle.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the way that he how'd you like to mow my lawn, that sort of thing. I mean, but that's so true. Right. And he wants to, he knocks the lamp out of the way when he's talking to him. It's like he wants to mentor this guy, but he doesn't have the capacity like that the other characters do to actually do that. But then they also lack the capacity to like do anything. Ty Webb could do something substantial for him. He could write a check for this kid to go to college, but like that's not his role.
Right.
He has that's not his thing. He actually does much more for him by mentoring him.
Yeah.
Than Smales.
I never thought about that. He could literally pick up 2 of those checks on the ground and just hand them to Danny.
Yes, he could. Yeah. But it's also like you're Roman Catholic, I'm sorry, you can't come. Right. It's like yes, he could pick up 2 of those checks and feed Danny's entire family for a month, but that's not his role. Right. And he actually gives them that's why the Doug Kenny thing about like the rite of passage really does kind of still stick into the script, because Danny does go through a sort of a rite of passage, because he learns, he sucks at, he's not great at golf, but he learns things from Ty, and golf is like just the method or the vehicle for him to prove himself like as a man.
Yeah, he learns
And-
to be himself, you know. He doesn't
Right.
sell out. He doesn't give in to, you know,
Yeah, that's
following
important.
Judge Smales, and he sticks by Ty
Yeah.
at the end.
And
right,
the fact
just to stick it to him.
Right. And the fact that, you know, Smales tells him, you know, how about this scholarship?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, the guy's desperate. You know, his
Right.
whole future's on the line. You know, he's going to end up in the lumberyard or whatever. Not that that's bad. He would go to learn how to be a man for himself and get away
Right.
from his family and have boundaries and make his own family and do all that stuff. But he's also kind of reckless, right?
Mhm.
I mean, like his relationship with the girl is kind of reckless.
Yeah.
But he's presented with this option to sell out, right?
Mhm.
And take the scholarship, which in that context is selling out. And
Yeah.
he's like, no, I don't even want it anymore.
Right.
Because it's more important that he like proves himself, because it's a comedy, you know, and because we know it's going to all's well that ends well, right?
Mhm.
In Shakespeare's words, you guys.
You know, Judge, my father never liked you.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, man. All right, I'm gonna go get a cup of coffee. Hendo, congrats, dude. Keep killing it.
Thanks, man.
Honestly, you're gonna blow past everybody else. You're killing it, dude. And I can't wait to see you up there at 100K, right next to Dyer.
Right.
Just killing the YouTube game. All right.
Listen,
So
thank
we're
you
here
so
for
much, Jerry.
We're here for 1K. We're here for 2K and all the other Ks after.
I appreciate you. And everybody go to, well, you're already there, I'm sure, but everybody go to Exposing Powerful Lies live streams. Our homeboy Jerry right here, EPL, Exposing Powerful Lies live streams, and sub to his channel and watch our most recent stream, right? You reposted the stream we were on with Andy at the Crucible. And so
yeah, we're supposed to do 2 a month. That's what Andy says. I'm sure it'll be more like 1 a month, but hey, hopefully we can get it to 2 a month. And yeah, look forward to those. I'll definitely always be reposting those up on my channel. And yeah, I make videos, you know. I'm not saying they're good or bad, or I just make videos, you know. So
they are good, and you are wise, and
they are videos.
Thanks, homeboy. Appreciate you.
All right, love you, brother.
You gonna stick around? Let me read the super chats real quick. Stick around.
Yeah, I'll probably be on mute. I've got a bit of a racket going on in the background. I'm sure. Hopefully that's not coming through too bad. But yeah, I'll stick around.
All right, let me refresh this, and I'm gonna get to the super chats if they pop up here. Thanks again to my sister out there. Hopefully you can still see me because this is a weird screen. Yes, so thank you to my sister out there for that. For that generous super chat. Really appreciate you, my sister out there. Love you so much. Shouts out to our homeboy Nico again for $4.99, who said, well done. Thank you to our homeboy right here, Maddie at The Real Cooter Brown, Digital Minefield. Everybody go to his channel and subscribe. That's Maddie at Digital Minefield, TRCB, Kutski, The Real Cooter Brown. And he said, Gossip Girl series when? What do you think about Gossip Girl, Kutski?
That is actually one of my favorite shows, and because it's like fascinating on a level of just like to see the kind of just like endless conniving. It's like people who are so just like narcissistic and out of touch and just like the worst people who can't get out of their own way. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's something that's deserving of an analysis, because like there's a lot of kind of interesting psychological and you know social factors in there.
Well, I don't know much about Gossip Girl, but I do know that one thing that's interesting to keep in mind, since you bring this up, is like the progression in terms of these like mainstream, you know, network channel teen drama coming of age stories, and how we went from, I forget what they were earlier, but 90210 is the first one I know of, right? So you have 90210, and the big draw is that, you know, you've got you know, they're privileged and they're real and they live in Beverly Hills, right? Or they have everything they want, but then of course Brandon and Brenda are like, they represent again this class sort of other aspect that comes in. That's why they don't really fit in. And the tension comes from them like trying to fit into this world. And then you have like the Luke Perry figure, who is sort of the same thing. He's like the bad boy or whatever. But the progression from Beverly Hills 90210, where you had you remember they had the drug episode, they had the fake drug Euphoria, right? Which is supposed to be kind of like, you the rave, we won't say it, but the rave drug. And you go from that, that's like early 90s, Gen X, and you go from that to, you had Melrose Place, but that's like kind of a different genre. And then you go to things like the OC, where like now it's on the thing that was relevant at the time, which is something you covered recently, which is the OC itself, right? The Oxy problem, which became a big thing in the show. And then you go to Gossip Girl, and now we end up with Euphoria itself. The name of the show is Euphoria, which is like just everything. I haven't seen it. I actually haven't seen it, but I've just heard of it. And I know that it's gratuitous in terms of all of its elements. And so I think that's obviously an aspect of culture creation. Yeah. Yeah. How am I going to leave out Dawson's Creek? Yes. Sorry. Yeah. I left out Dawson. And it's also interesting that, yeah, James Vanderbeek goes from playing Dawson. Is he Dawson? Who's Dawson in the show, right? Is it Katie Holmes or is he Dawson? I don't know.
I've actually never watched that show, so I
don't know.
I'm lost on this one.
But Katie Holmes goes from that to marrying Tom Coombe, and then James Vanderbeek goes from that to playing Sean Bateman, the younger brother of Patrick Bateman in Rules of Attraction. So it's this kind of thing that our friends have covered in detail in terms of the cultural creation and creeper elements in Hollyweird and all that stuff. But that's an interesting point you bring up.
Have you done a Rules of Attraction stream yet?
No, and I'm probably not going to, just because it's, first of all, it's not one of my favorite Bret Easton Ellis books, and the narrative is interesting because it is, I don't want to say stream of consciousness, but it's more of a freewheeling prose narrative without punctuation that mirrors the mindset of Sean Bateman and what he's into. But the subject matter is just not as, there's a lot in it that I don't really want to cover. Not that the other novels don't have those elements, but the next Bret Easton Ellis one that I am doing another one. I just ordered the book, is The Informers, because it's a book about the 80s LA, like, elites sort of on, going Skid Row chic, right? They sort of troll nightclubs. They're elites, and one of them is a vampire. So it's kind of more revelatory for what we're doing. I could also cover Glamorama. Glamorama is the book about that. I think Bret Easton Ellis might have sued Ben Stiller for this. Maybe, I don't remember, but it's kind of the same plot, but it's a serious plot. It's basically a model who gets involved in geopolitical black bag operations. It's called Glamorama. So that might be one to cover.
Yeah, the thing with Ellis is I like his books. I've read a few of them, but they're depressing, like especially Rules of Attraction, because it's like there's no good characters. And like everybody is just like the most horrible, like, selfish, just like sociopath. Yeah, and that's kind of the reason why I'm not covering Less Than Zero, because it's just too. What I like about Ellis is like this kind of sardonic wit in it, and the sense of like, and there's irony. But those books I just don't find to be. They are important books for what they are, but I just don't think I'm going to cover those. He's got a new book coming out in January called The Shards, that I probably will cover. It would be awesome to have. Maybe we get Ellis on our small little corner of the internet sometime here and interview him about writing. I don't know. That'd be cool. Yeah, he seems like a
he does a podcast.
Yeah, so, I haven't listened to it, but I've heard it's good.
Who knows? I'm also, he went to what's the school that he went to in Vermont? And it's referenced all the time in the books, but he was there with Jay McInerney, who did Bright Lights, Big City, and Donna Tartt. And Donna Tartt is her own thing. If anybody's read The Goldfinch, I mean, I thought The Goldfinch was like an incredible, but I haven't seen the movie. I kind of don't want to see the movie because of my impression of the book. But The Goldfinch is like a great novel. It's a work. I don't know about the secret history, but Donna Tartt, who's from Mississippi, shouts out to my family down there, and went up to a Northeastern college, which is pretty interesting. And was there with those two other writers. How weird is it that you have these three writers? How weird, how I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, but you have these three big writers at the same time in this literati explosion in the late 80s. We get $4.99 from Fallen World Films, said Slow Boy Whiteboard, turn me onto your channel. Sweet. Thank you again so much. We got $5 from our homeboy Blocksky out there, Block Party Vintage. Thank you so much to our based poster. Blocksky, love you, homeboy. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Appreciate your support and friendship. Thank you to Jason, who sends $2. No message. Thank you to our longtime supporter, Jason. Really appreciate you. And let's see. And shouts out to DJ, who sends $7.99 Ozbox and says, thanks for all the great content. Congratulations. Thank you so much. So really, really appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Thank you so much. Let me refresh it one more time just to make sure. And thank you for stopping by, Kuski. Really appreciate you. And it shouts out to Devin, who sends $25 and says, let's see, license to kill gophers by the government of the United Nations. Man, free to kill gophers at will. To kill, you must know your enemy. In case my enemy is a varmint. Awesome. Having a blast. Thank you, Varmint Kong. Thank you so much to Devin. Really appreciate you. And thank you to Kristen, who sends $5 on Cash App. Really appreciate you for that awesome donation. Love you as always. And again, thank you to my sister. Really love you out there and appreciate you. Thanks to everybody who's here. Y'all, thank you for being here with us for this 1K party stream. We're well past 1K now. We're doing really well at the channel. And thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for being here with me. Hopefully we're going to be here for a while and covering a lot of great books in the future and a lot of great works of literature. We'll be going all over the spectrum, so to speak, of English literature and the canon of literature. We'll be doing we'll be going back into Shakespeare. Of course, we got postmodern literature, modernist literature. We'll do more poetry in the future. We'll go back to Victorian novels, etc. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Kuski, shout out your channel one more time.
Yeah, it's kind of I have way too many names and it's complicated. But yeah, Digital Mind, Into the Minefield is the name of the show. It's just a name I came up with. So I think if you just search Digital Minefield on YouTube, that's like the first thing that comes up. So been doing some streams lately and trying to do more, trying to get better about it, trying to grow the channel. It's been slow going, but yeah, it's been fun.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. And thanks again for stopping by, you guys. And go to Digital Minefield, Real Cooter Brown, Maddie, TRCB. Thank you so much. Really appreciate y'all for being here. I love you, and I will see you soon. That's about all I got. Peace, y'all. Peace.